Hello everybody, a very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock and we are live in Manchester for you this morning. Why? Well, it is the start of the Conservative Party conference. What have we got for you? Today it's all about the economy. To that end, we'll have the Chancellor with us on the programme very shortly indeed. He's talking about the work shy. Who does he mean by that? All of that to come. It is Monday, the 2nd of October. Also on the programme for you this morning, war on the work shy, the Chancellor's warning to some benefit claimants as he reveals a boost for the minimum wage.
Christmas Day levels of cover expected as junior doctors and consultants join forces for a 3-day strike. Child abduction. A 9-year-old girl goes missing riding her bike in New York after asking her family if she could do a lap of the park by herself. Search for survivors after a church roof collapses during Sunday Mass in Mexico, killing at least 9 worshippers. Trump trial. The former president indicates he may turn up to the start of his fraud case today and argues his rivals are out to get him. Anybody for another round? How Europe's Ryder Cup winners partied into the night. Morning, everybody, from the Conservative Party conference right here in Manchester, God's own country. Today is all about the economy. The Chancellor will be joining us in just a few moments' time. He's already taking aim at the work shy and those people on benefits not looking for work, saying they don't deserve the same help as those people trying to do the right thing. He's also boosting the minimum wage. But is the party divided over tax cuts before the next election? Here's tomorrow.
Are we going to see tax cuts before the next election?
The burning question for Conservatives. When is the financial squeeze going to ease?
Is your cabinet united, Prime Minister?
And they don't seem to be of one voice.
I would like to see the tax burden reduced before the next election.
While Michael Gove wants tax cuts now, the Chancellor says there's virtually no chance until inflation is under control. Today, Jeremy Hunt will make his keynote speech, saying the government is on track to halve inflation and will raise the minimum wage to £11 an hour from next year.
It's a crucial conference for Rishi Sunak, his first as leader and likely his last before a general election. It's clear that Tories here want to see more of a vision if he's to have any chance of turning things around.
Lots of questions, but few answers from the Prime Minister's top team.
Where are we going? Do you think we should have tax cuts before the election? Would you like to see that? Before the election? Is the Cabinet divided about tax cuts?
Hello.
Is the party divided about tax cuts?
We're not.
No? Do you think we should have them before the next election?
Well, we'll see. That's a matter for the Chancellor, the Prime Minister.
Today, the ghosts of Conservative past will be back. Liz Truss will address a rally calling for tax cuts for businesses. Her allies are feeling restless.
The Tory party has always been the party of low taxation and sound money, and sometimes there is a tension between them. But overall, we need tax cuts and we need economic growth. And I think the autumn statement/budget is a time to say, this is what we are doing on this particular tax.
A year ago, Truss's premiership was in its final throes. Rishi Sunak has tried to steady the ship. He needs this conference to show there is a course, however narrow, to victory. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Manchester.
Look who's come up to Manchester with me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Via Florence, I think. It's all about the Chancellor today.
It is all about the Chancellor today. Today's theme of Tory party conference is about money. It's about public finances and how they are going to try and find a way to get the public finances back on track. Now, the issue is that the Tories are always going to be grappling with how to fix the economy when they have been in power for 13 years, and therefore some would say, why do they need to fix the economy? Shouldn't they have fixed it by now? Now, they would say it's COVID and it's economic issues from outside of their control, like the war in Ukraine. And that's why we've had this big announcement today from the Treasury all about living wage. So it's about increasing the living wage to at least £11 an hour from April next year, which will be a massive boost to some of the lowest paid in society. They're also talking about cracking down on benefits, saying that actually work needs to pay and people shouldn't be sitting at home on benefits. We have a huge workforce shortage at the moment, and that is causing a lot of pressure on the UK economy, where employers can't get people into work. So it's about trying to incentivise people back into work to try and boost the economy and grow the economy.
OK, Mari Finai, thanks very much indeed. To that end, we'll be chatting to the Chancellor in just a few moments' time, 7:20 to be precise. That's the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt here on The Breakfast Show on Sky News Monday morning from Manchester and the Conservative Party conference, 7:20. Used to be in charge, of course, of the NHS, and bosses there are warning patients to expect extreme disruption in hospitals this week, with Christmas Day levels of cover expected. Junior doctors and consultants are joining forces to strike over pay and conditions. Thousands of British Medical Association members started their action this hour. The union says they'll be doing what's called Christmas Day cover. It means only emergency care will be fully staffed over the next 72 hours. Junior doctors and consultants have been offered a 6% pay rise, plus an additional £1,250 for junior doctors. The BMA is asking for a rise of 35%. Strikes have led to more than 1 million appointments and operations being cancelled. Matthew has more for us. So I think you're in Reading for us this morning, aren't you, at the Royal Berkshire Hospital? What's expected there? Good morning to you, Matthew.
Well, extreme disruption, in a couple of words, Kay. Good morning. This is arguably the most disruptive strike in the history of the NHS in England. Just 2 weeks ago or so, both junior doctors and consultants went on strike together for the very first time. But that was only for 24 hours. As of, well, about 6 or 7 minutes ago, they're now on strike together for 3 full days. Now, as you said, the British Medical Association, the union, is promising what's called Christmas Day levels of care. That's essentially the same levels of staffing you would expect on Christmas Day, but that's very much a skeleton crew. And so apart from emergency medicine, there is going to be fairly significant disruption to all sorts of other appointments. It is important to point out, though, if you do need emergency care, the advice is to use A&E as normal or simply call 999. But aside from that, there will be widespread disruption. And hopefully over the course of the morning, we'll be taking you around various parts of Royal Berkshire Hospital and showing you what the impact is going to be. As for the dispute itself, well, it's now nearly, well, over, in fact, 100 days since the Health Secretary sat down with the unions, the BMA. There are no further talks planned between the sides, and so frankly, there is no immediate or even medium to long-term prospect of this dispute being resolved, and that almost certainly means more strike action. We know that in Wales they're balloting for strike action as well, the BMA. They've also said in Northern Ireland they're considering doing the same thing.
Matthew, thanks. More politics coming up in just a few moments' time. Before that, though, let's bring you other headlines making the news this hour here on The Breakfast Show. Police in New York searching for a 9-year-old girl who they believe was abducted while camping with her family. Charlotte Senna was last seen shortly after 6 o'clock on Saturday at Moreau Lake State Park in Saratoga County, 50 miles north of the state capital, that's Albany. Police believe Charlotte is in imminent danger of serious harm. The 9-year-old had been riding a loop of the park with family friends. She said she wanted to do one more lap by herself, but did not return. Her bike was later found. More than 100 personnel and 75 law enforcement officials have since been deployed in the search.
We are leaving no stone, no branch, no table, no cabin unturned, untouched, unexamined in our search to find Charlotte. We'll keep the members of the public updated. I promised her parents we'll find her daughter. She's all of our daughters. Their family needs love. They need prayers. And if you know anything, if you've seen anything, you hear anything, please contact 911.
Looking at other headlines for you now, at least 9 people have died after the roof of a church in Mexico collapsed on worshippers during Sunday Mass. The next pictures we're going to show you capture the moment of the roof collapse sent from a distance. Locals rushed to the scene to try to help dig survivors out with their hands. Police say about 100 people were in the church at the time of the incident. 3 of those killed were children, with local media reporting that baptisms were scheduled to take place. It's reported that around 20 people are trapped, 49 taken to the hospital. The bishop of the local diocese sent this message to the community.
Hoy estamos viviendo un momento muy difícil en nuestra diócesis de Tampico. Se ha colapsado el techo de una iglesia de la Santa Cruz, estando en la celebración de la Eucaristía. En estos momentos están haciendo los trabajos necesarios para sacar a las personas que aún se encuentran debajo de los escombros. Vemos también las personas que están cerca de ese lugar que puedan colaborar con lo que se está solicitando. Las parroquias, las comunidades, estamos al pendiente también de lo que se pueda ocupar. Les pido su oración, les pido también que podamos estar unidos en un solo corazón ante esta tragedia.
Let's tell you about Donald Trump now. He's hinted he'll turn up to his fraud trial in Manhattan, which begins later on today. The state's Attorney General, that's Letitia James, has accused the former president, his 2 eldest sons, and the entire Trump organization of lying about the value of assets to benefit their business needs. Last week, a district court judge set in motion the prospect of Mr. Trump, President Trump, losing his New York business license and force him to sell all his New York property. President Trump has said his rivals are out to get him and branded the judge deranged. Mobile phones could soon be banned in England's schools. The Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, will reveal plans to crack down on students using their phones during lessons and during break times. She hopes it will allow them to focus on their studies instead. A man's been charged with a public order offence after a young football fan, Bradley Lowry, who died of cancer, was mocked at a match. Dale Horton from Rotherham will appear before Sheffield Magistrates Court this morning. Second man who was arrested has been released on bail. Big hugs for that little man. Households in England and Wales could soon see a rise in water bills as companies upgrade their infrastructure to tackle water pollution. Firms are undertaking a 5-year upgrade plan, which could add £156 to annual bills. Turkey says it's carried out a number of airstrikes in northern Iraq. The Defence Ministry said warplanes destroyed 20 targets of suspected Kurdish rebels. It's in response to a suicide bombing near Ankara's Parliament building on Sunday morning. Still to come on the programme for you, 7:45. We'll speak to the boss of the National Education Union about free school meals after dozens of A-list celebrities call on the government to provide them for all primary school children. 9:20, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, that's Andy Burnham, will be joining us. We'll ask him about speculation that the HS2 leg to Manchester will be axed. And 9:45, speaking to the boss of the RMT Union, that's Mick Lynch, as thousands of London Underground workers and train drivers prepare to walk out this morning over pay. Murray's joining us. We're going to chat to her again in just a second. Before that, let's have a quick look at the front pages for you. The Guardian saying that Tory factions threaten to wreck Sunak's conference. That's their phraseology. The Eye also reports on the competition facing the minister, looking at those jostling for the party's future leadership at a general election. Mirror leads on the host of celebrities backing calls from all primary school pupils to be given free school meals. And the Daily Mail leads with the Education Secretary's plans to ban mobile phones in schools. We've just been talking about that. Times looks at doctor strikes facing the NHS and points to the Trust paying well over the odds to cover shifts in hospital. It's all about money today. Who better to talk to than the Chancellor? Good morning to you, Chancellor.
Morning,
Thanks
Kay.
for joining us on the programme this morning. What is the point of party conference?
I think party conferences is a moment when all parties can actually get the media spotlight and give their message out very clearly as to what their values are, what they believe in, and what their plans are for the country. And normally in the sort of hurly-burly of Westminster, when you're debating a law or something that's happened, it's not always easy to get that clarity. But this is a moment when we can be clear.
Does the party make money out of it?
I think all parties do make money because we don't have, you know, publicly funded political parties to a large extent in the way that other countries do. And I don't think taxpayers would want to pay the sort of sums that you see in other European countries for their political parties.
So it's a money-making venture?
Well, you know, we have to raise money. I have to fundraise. Labour Party has to fundraise. That's the system we have because we don't want to charge taxpayers for it. I think that's probably the lesser of two evils.
Has a decision been made about HS2?
You'll have to wait until the appropriate time.
I'm not asking you what the decision is, I'm just asking you if a decision's been made.
Well, what I'll say is that we've had lots of discussions, and let me tell you why we've had those discussions. As Chancellor, you would expect me to want to answer the question as to why to answer the question as to why it costs 10 times more to build a high-speed rail line in Britain compared to France, because this is the public's money we're talking about.
No, I get that, so, I'm just asking whether a decision has been made. I'm not asking what it is.
Well, you will hear in politics, as you know very well.
Just answer my question.
I know, Kay. As politics, as you know very, very well, decisions are not made until they're announced, and at the appropriate time, we will make the announcement.
OK. What would be the benefits of keeping the northern leg of HS2?
Well, I'm sorry, Kay, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm not going to go into details. Well, let me tell you this, that in terms of things like the northern leg of HS2, whatever decision we make, we will take very careful note of the need to have proper economic infrastructure throughout the whole country. But in terms of this specific decision, I'm afraid you will have to wait.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking you what would be the benefits of keeping it.
Well, you're trying to draw me on what the decision might be.
That's my job.
It is your job, but it's also my job to say that we will make the announcement.
It's your job not to answer the question.
No, it's my job to say we'll make the announcement at the appropriate time, and I promise you we will.
OK. You want to cut back the size of the public sector, but say it won't mean a return to austerity. How much do you need to cut?
Well, I don't think it needs to be about cuts, and I'm a passionate believer in public services. My message today is that if we want to have faster growth and also an end to taxes ever ratcheting higher, that is possible, but there are no shortcuts. We have to make it easier for businesses to grow, but we also have to be more efficient in the way we spend taxpayers' money. Let me give you an example. Teachers say that they spend more time on non-teaching tasks than actually teaching. Police officers say they have to fill in hours and hours of paperwork before they can start a trial. We want to change that, and I'll be talking more this afternoon when I give my comments about how we're going to do that. But we have with Rishi Sunak a leader who's prepared to take the difficult decisions to make sure that we do spend taxpayers' money wisely, so that we do have a path to bringing down overall taxes.
I'm glad you brought up taxes because, as you know, Michael Gove was speaking to Trevor Phillips just yesterday about this very subject. And he says, Michael Gove, senior Tory, he wants tax cuts for working people. Do you agree with him?
I would love to see tax cuts for working people. I'd love to see tax cuts for everyone.
Tell me what that would look like.
Well, let me answer your question.
Do.
At the moment, if we...
Please do.
Thank you. I'm always happy to answer your questions.
No, you're not, Chancellor. I asked you about HS2 and you won't tell me.
Yes, just because it's not the appropriate time. We haven't made that announcement. But let me tell you, when it comes to tax cuts, if we gave big tax cuts now, that would put more money in people's pockets and that would be inflationary. And right now, we are in a big battle, which is succeeding, to bring down inflation. It was over 11% when I became Chancellor. It's now under 7%. And the fastest way that we can help working families, the people that Michael Gove was talking about, if we halve inflation, that's not a 1p in the pound tax cut. That's 5p in the pound boost to their income. That's the fastest thing we can do, and nothing is going to compromise that battle. But do we want to move to lower taxes as soon as we can? Yes. But it means difficult decisions, and we're prepared to take those difficult decisions, both Rishi Sunak and me.
Might we see a headline tax cut before the next election?
Well, I can't tell you what the state of the economy is going to be.
Are you ruling it
going
out?
Forward. What I can say is that it's very difficult to see having that kind of tax cut this year, for two reasons.
First, say that, Chancellor. I said ahead of the next election.
No, but I'm answering the question as accurately as I can. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what is going to be happening with the economy. Right now, public finances don't allow that. Our interest payments are predicted to be much higher than at the spring budget, and it would be inflationary. But if you're asking me, is it something that I'm willing to put us on a path to doing? I do want us to have lower taxes, and I'm prepared to take the difficult decisions to make that happen.
And that potentially could be ahead of the next general election?
Well, I just don't know about timings. It'd be wrong. Well, I don't have a crystal ball, Kay, so it would be wrong to your viewers to make a prediction one way or the other. But what I will be talking about today is how we get our country on a path to lower taxes. And that does mean something that we haven't talked about enough, which is more efficiency in the way we spend taxpayers' money, and also reforming our approach to welfare, which is something else I'll be talking about today.
Indeed so. War on work-shy is what it's been called. What does that look like?
What we're saying is that if you're prepared to work hard, this government will back you. So we are saying today, I'll be announcing later today, that we'll be increasing the national living wage to over £11 an hour. That means that if you're on the lowest legally payable wage, you are earning £9,000 a year more than you were earning in 2010. And that, by the way, is why unemployment has come down 1 million since then, because we're making work pay. But at the same time, we have 300,000 people who haven't got an illness or a sickness or a disability, but have been out of work for more than a year. And we have 1 million vacancies. We have companies that desperately need their help to expand, and we're saying we need you to engage seriously and properly with the process of getting a job, because that's what the taxpayers who are funding your benefits would expect to see.
OK, what about those that have worked all their life and have now stepped back? Will you commit to the triple lock on pensions?
You'll hear what we're going to do on that in the autumn statement, but look at our actions today. We have always prioritised that group of people, because unlike people of working age, I said you'll hear in the autumn statement, Kay. I can see the edge of a smile coming out there, because you're very brilliantly trying to get me to preempt the autumn statement. The reason, by the way, I can't tell you what's in the autumn statement is not because I'm hiding it. It's because we haven't actually received the numbers from the Office of Budget Responsibility, so we don't know
something that
what's
won't
possible.
be in the autumn statement is whether or not inflation will come down to 3%. If it does, will that trigger a snap election?
Timing the general election is a matter for the Prime Minister.
You live next door.
Yes, it's true, but it's a matter for the Prime Minister. And what he wants to do is to get on with taking the difficult decisions to put this country on the right track. He's prepared to take on areas that other Prime Ministers, other administrations have ducked. You're going to see that, and we're thinking about getting on with that rather than the date of the next election.
Inheritance tax, what are you going to do about that?
Well, I'm afraid it is in the basket of all tax cuts. We're just not in a position to talk about big tax cuts.
When do you think you might be able to?
Well, that's what I'm really saying today, and there isn't a shortcut. There is a choice.
You don't have a lot of time left.
Well, there is a choice here, Kay, because the Labour Party don't want to bring down taxes at all. We do. And what I'll be saying is like, you're asking me to look into a crystal ball, which I don't have. But what I'm saying is, I will be saying, what are the difficult decisions that you need to take? What is the difficult path that Rishi Sunak and I believe you should go on if you do want to bring down taxes? I'll be explaining that at the conference this afternoon, so that we are in a position and people will be able to see there is a choice. The last Labour government increased taxes in 13 out of 13 budgets. This Conservative government is committed to putting us on a path to lower taxes as soon as we possibly can.
But you don't know when that might be.
So
what are people actually voting for if you can't tell them?
Well, they're voting because I'm telling them the truth, which is that if you want these things,
you might get you might be able to get a cut in your taxes at some time in the future, but I can't tell you when that is. Please vote for me anyway.
Well, I think you underestimate the British people. They understand.
Don't think I do.
Yeah, they understand how difficult these decisions are. They don't want a chancellor who stands up and says there's an easy route to motherhood and apple pie. They understand there are no shortcuts, and they want to see, are you showing me credibly what needs to be done if you're going to be able to bring down my taxes? and that's what I'll be doing.
And finally, before I let you go, I'm just going to return to HS2, if I may. Just one final push, see if I can get anything out of you. If I live in Manchester and I'm an Arsenal fan, if I live in London and I'm a Manchester United fan, is it going to be easier? Are you going to extend HS2 or are you not?
I'm afraid you're going to have to wait.
It's always great to see you, Chancellor. Thanks very much. And it's a question, actually, that the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, will want to know the answer to as well. To that end, he's on the show a little bit later on. He's joining us at 9:20 this morning. And just to tell you about a new podcast from Sky News and Politico, Politics at Jack and Sam, sees our own Sam Coates and Politico's Jack Blanchard team up to tell you everything you need to know about the week in politics. You can subscribe by scanning the QR code on screen right now. Quick look at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Mix of autumn sunshine and blustery showers this week. Temperatures will gradually rise, leading to a very warm weekend. It'll be a mild start this morning with low cloud, fog patches and some drizzle for southern parts of Britain. Further north, it will be fresher with scattered showers. Northwest Scotland will be windy and showery through the day, with a few showers spreading to the rest of Scotland.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Who doesn't like a bit of Taylor this time on a Monday morning? After the pop star was spotted cheering on her rumoured boyfriend, he's the Kansas City player Travis Kelce, hopefully that's how I pronounce it, last week. Ticket sales soared for last night's NFL game, and not one to disappoint, Taylor turned up to last night's match with a flurry of celebrity friends, including Ryan Reynolds and Sophie Turner. Still to come on the programme for you, doctors have walked out, talking to one about their demands next. Plus, talking to someone who can tell us about the abuse that NHS staff have faced since strikes began. An impressive first pitch of the game. We'll see how this baseball fan made a statement. And Ryder Cup celebrations are in full swing following Team Europe's triumph over the US.
The economy.
Health. Security.
Education.
Immigration. Stability.
Cost of living. Our futures. Whatever the issues facing you, we want to find out what's really going on in the UK. We will always put people at the heart of the story on the UK Tonight with me, Sarah Jane Mee, on Sky News.
Well, it started off as a project to do a piece of work which would be a composite of, say, 80 portraits and have it as one piece. So from a distance, it would look quite abstract. And then as you got closer, you'll see the sort of personalities of each portrait. And that's a portrait I just did of a friend's dog who passed away last year. So I trained at the Royal Academy and learned. We did a lot of drawing from life, and there was a lot of portraiture as well. So I was inspired by that. My father was an artist, and he did some wonderful portraits. So I suppose it's in my psyche, really. Unfortunately, 10 years ago, my fiancée passed away, Debbie, and she said, if you can do 80, you can do 100. If you can do 100, you can do 200. And she said, you know, you could actually do the city of St. David's. And I just thought, what an amazing idea. And it's sort of her legacy as well. And it's very much, you know, the way I've dealt with bereavement and focusing on people. And I've met some amazing people through it and some wonderful characters. And you get to know a certain sort of facet of their characters, an insight into who they are. And it's done me the power of good, and I just absolutely adore doing them. My philosophy is just to carry on doing it. I love doing them so much, and it sort of centres me, and it's something, as I said earlier on, a focal point for me. And it sort of, so by next year, I hope to achieve 1,000. Well, I don't hope, I will achieve 1,000. So that seems a considerable number to exhibit.
The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Murray is here chatting to you about what the Chancellor had to say in just a second. Fascinating stuff.
Very.
That to come in a sec. First, our top stories for you this morning. Junior doctors and consultants have begun a 72-hour walkout over NHS pay. This man used to be in charge of the NHS. What did he think about it? We're talking to Murray about it in just a second. Police in New York have begun a huge search for a 9-year-old who went missing while riding her bike near a campsite after asking her family if she could do a lap of the park by herself. Murray, the Chancellor speaking at party conference, where we are, Conservative Party conference, later on today here in Manchester. He didn't give much away.
He didn't give much away. I think there'll be kind of people waiting with bated breath to see whether he has a rabbit that he can pull out of a hat or whether he wants to keep that for the autumn statement. He continued to say to you, wait for the autumn statement, wait for the autumn statement. But what was interesting was he was very clear on the pension triple lock. He said, trust us on the triple lock. Look at our record so far on the triple lock. Therefore, I think that was a really quite heavy hint that the triple lock is staying.
Yeah.
He knows he can't give away things until the autumn statement, but it really was a very, very heavy hint, which is very interesting because we still don't know fully where Labour say they are on the triple lock.
Cutting taxes?
Yes, so he said he wanted to see a path to cutting taxes. He wanted to see tax cuts ASAP. However, he didn't agree with Michael Gove, his cabinet colleague, that it needed to be before the next election. He wouldn't be drawn on timings. He said, I don't have a crystal ball. Interestingly, don't have a crystal ball, but the autumn statement is really quite soon, and the spring statement is even less than a year away as well. He says he wants to have, focus on the OBR forecasts and how he wants to use the OBR forecasts, which we know that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng didn't do, and therefore he's trying to be fiscally responsible and make sure he doesn't repeat the mistakes of chancellors and PMs past. But nonetheless, I think your question on what are people voting for really hit the nail on the head, because the question is, what is the difference financially between the Tories and the Labour? And at the moment, because we have so little detail, there isn't a huge amount of difference.
And as far as HS2 is concerned, wouldn't be drawn on that one. I tried every which way.
You did. You tried so hard and he wouldn't give you anything. And the thing is about the government at the moment is they're moaning about speculation. They're saying it's just speculation, but the easiest way to end the speculation is just to say it's staying. And the fact that they won't do that is just continuing to fuel the speculation and fuel the questions. And it's to an extent completely dominating the conference more than really what they want to talk about. They want to be talking about this living wage announcement, but instead, everyone is talking about HS2. We are in Manchester.
Exactly, and I wonder whether that's one of the reasons that they won't tell us what's going to happen. It's a Labour Party conference next week in Liverpool. Perhaps a good week to bury bad news from Manchester. Let's wait and see. For now, Murray, thanks very much indeed. Something else we want to talk about now is the strikes facing the NHS this week. Junior doctors and also consultants, senior doctors, are walking out over pay and conditions. NHS bosses are warning patients to expect extreme disruption in hospitals. What does that look like? Among the procedures that have been delayed this week are elective C-sections. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has more.
I feel like I've now lost all control of the birth.
We're protecting Lisa's identity by using an actor to tell her story. She's almost 39 weeks pregnant and has a pre-existing condition. There are concerns about the size of her baby. So with her midwife, she had planned to have an elective caesarean section.
I felt a huge relief at this decision. I have since been told that it's not possible to book the C-section because of the strikes. The earliest replacement date is more than a week after my due date. I think I'll be pushed for an induction before my C-section booking if I've not gone into labour.
One Trust chief executive has confirmed to Sky News that the industrial action is impacting its ability to provide elective caesarean births. Matthew Hopkins, who runs Mid and South Essex NHS Foundation Trust, said, "We raised this issue as we take delays to planned caesarean births very seriously. Our first concern is the safety of women and birthing people and their babies, and all options are considered by our clinical teams before postponing planned caesarean births." The BMA has told Sky News that the vast majority of hospitals have rearranged their work either side of industrial action, and that specialist consultants are used to reprioritising how and when women are scheduled for induction of labour or caesarean section based on changing circumstances. The Department of Health says it's committed to making the NHS the safest place in the world to give birth for all women, and that during industrial action, the NHS will prioritise resources to protect emergency care and neonatal and maternity services.
I am certain I do not want to be induced.
But, as Lisa's case shows, there are concerns that this isn't really happening. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Huge relief.
Well, Dr. Vivek Trivedi is co-chair of the British Medical Association's Junior Doctors Committee and joins us now. Hello to you, Doctor. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. How concerned are you about the sheer impact of joint strikes?
Well, the impact of joint strikes is that it puts more pressure on the government to come to the table, because it's now been it's been almost 150 days since Mr. Barclay has met myself or the colleagues representing doctors who are not consultants, and it's been more than 170 days since they've met our consultant colleagues. But ultimately, we've enacted a form of strike action which keeps emergency care, as you've just heard in the reel before, to make sure that patients in the hospital are still receiving appropriate care in a safe and timely way, which allows us to put this pressure on the government to come to the table.
And how much pressure is it putting on your NHS colleagues who are still working?
All NHS colleagues know that we're all fighting the same fight, because we've all been held back by varying degrees by this government. And if you see polls about support for doctors taking strike action, it's very high amongst NHS colleagues, and actually even high amongst the general public, because everybody knows that the only way to end this dispute is at the negotiating table. So the longer the government delays and the longer the government allows these strikes to continue, the more impact they are putting onto the public. But ultimately, we've got doctors that I'm representing who've had their pay slashed by more than 26%, now on £15.50 when they graduate from university. It is just not competitive enough to keep them here. And what we're seeing is those doctors are being driven away. And it's just such a shame that the government is taking no action to try and avert this.
And how much pressure is it putting on the waiting list now, 7.8 million and rising every day?
Well, strikes by design are due to be disruptive. And I am sorry that it does cause some impact to this waiting list, but actually that waiting list was already above 7 million before we took any strike action. I'm an anaesthetist. I see patients that come in for elective surgeries on a daily basis. And unfortunately, we're having to cancel patients because we don't have enough staff to look after people. You know, and it's not just people waiting for elective procedures. Doctors are sparse in numbers in A&E departments, and that means that patients are having to wait longer to see doctors in A&E. That's leading to harm. That's leading to death. That's what we've heard from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. We've heard it from the Royal College of Radiologists. We're hearing from so many senior health officials, and I'm just so unsure why Mr. Sunak is making no effort to fix pay, which is the #1 reason that doctors are being driven away from this, from our workforce, to try and restore our workforce to the credibility that it had before, and be able to provide high quality healthcare once again.
And what would you say to those people who are being told have had their appointments changed up to 8 times so far?
I'm very sorry that the government has failed to stop this strike action from taking place. These dates were announced 6 weeks ago. That's at least 6 weeks that the government had to come to the table, to put credible offers to both consultant doctors and doctors that I represent, to stop this strike action from happening. But yet again, this is another government failure, and the patients and the public that you just described are the ones that are having to live through this because our government are not acting reasonably, and they are the ones that are allowing these strikes to continue.
Is this the last set of strikes, no matter what?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Is this the last set of strikes, or if you don't get what you're looking for, you'll strike again?
Well, our mandate extends until the end of February. Our consultant colleagues extend, I think, until around December. We don't have to strike again. This could very well be the last strikes if the government came to the table and were able to put offers to our respective memberships. But of course, if they don't do that, then we do reserve the right to call for action, and we may have to escalate if that's the case.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Doctor. Much appreciated. Let's bring in Sarah Makepeace. She's Directorate Manager for ENT Admin Teams at the Royal Berkshire NHS Foundation Trust. Hello to you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. What sort of impact are these double strikes having on your hospital?
Staff members, it's really having an impact on them, having to keep rescheduling patients up to 7 times. We obviously try and accommodate where we can, but obviously we're running out of capacity to get these patients in. We're still obviously recovering from COVID, so we've got the backlogs from there, plus we're still getting urgents, routines and 2-week waits coming through, so we need to deal with them, and we need to deal with them in a timely manner. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
And what's your message to your colleagues who are striking?
We support and we understand their fight, but it's hard on the admin teams, but it's double-edged sword, really, isn't it? It's harsh.
Do you know how many appointments you've had to rearrange during this bout of strikes?
I think over the trust for these strikes, it's been about 6,000 patients we've had to reschedule. So it's a lot of work for the admin teams that have got to phone each and every patient.
I'm sure. Yeah. What reaction do you get from the public or would-be patients when you call them and say, really sorry, we've got to change your appointment?
They're getting frustrated, they're getting angry. They understand the reasons behind it, but it doesn't help them in their situation and their requirement to be seen.
You're confident, obviously, that you can keep the hospital running despite this latest round of strikes. If there is another lot of strikes, the doctors, junior and senior doctors, don't get what they want, what impact will that have on you? Is there a breaking point?
There will inevitably be a breaking point, but we'll just do what we can to make sure that our patients are seen and obviously getting them through.
OK. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We are live from the Conservative Party conference here in Manchester this morning. It was tricky getting here because there's a rail strike yesterday and there's another one on Wednesday. The Chancellor actually came up, was on the show a few moments ago, actually flew up.
He did. Yes.
That was quite clever of him, wasn't
Very
it?
speedy.
Yeah.
Unlike other ones of us, you know, on the train or
however long
or
it
whatever
takes. For some of us, it would have been quicker walking, let's be honest.
Absolutely.
HS2, that would make the difference.
It really would, and I think the people in Manchester want answers. I mean, in my taxi from the train station yesterday, he didn't know I was a journalist, he was just having a chat with me, and he was really frustrated that he just wanted an answer one way or the other, and I think a lot of people in Manchester just feel that actually, just tell us if it's happening or not so we can deal with the news. And I think businesses, even to an extent, would say, let's just have an answer so we can either invest or not invest, or choose to invest differently. And I think the lack of answers on HS2 is causing frustration, and as we were saying earlier, to an extent is kind of dominating the conversation in Tory conference, where today they want to be talking about, you know, good news for the economy and living wage and all the other kind of announcements that they are bringing out. The Chancellor's giving a speech today, and the issue is that the more and more that the lack of answers is fueling that vacuum, the more it ends up taking up space and airtime for other things that they really want to be talking about, you know?
Doesn't want to talk about taxes, doesn't want to talk about HS2, but he is speaking to conference later on today. It was interesting what he was saying about why they actually have party conference. And when we came to the nub of it, it's to make money.
It is. It's to make money. It's to try and rally the troops, make sure that they can fundraise, you know, replenish the coffers. And to an extent, I think this conference is very much seen for Rishi Sunak as a way to kind of rejuvenate the party, trying to kind of rally backbenchers and party members and saying, look, I know I wasn't technically elected by you, because let's not forget he wasn't chosen by the members, but he's nonetheless trying to say, I've got a vision for the Tory party, let me take you with me. That is what he's trying to do. But, as we were saying, it's dominated by many other stories.
Wednesday morning, is it his speech?
Yes,
Wednesday morning from the Prime Minister. This afternoon from the Chancellor?
Yes, I think it's at 11 or 12.
Oh, OK, so this morning, forgive me. We'll see you in a few minutes' time. Thanks so much indeed, Mara. She knows everything. Still to come, an impressive first pitch of the game. We'll see how this baseball fan made a statement. And the A-listers calling on the government to provide free school meals. We speak to the head of the National Education Union.
Welcome to the Politics Hub, an hour of political news, interviews and debate.
On their and done nothing. Not at all.
What is that reform going to look like? There's an offer on the table. I'm not doing the negotiations.
What is he doing?
There's a much bigger discussion at the moment.
Reform the entire institution or abolish it.
People will start to move over.
But what better time can there be?
I knew it was going to be a good panel tonight. I'm going to be here weeknights at 7 p.m. and what will be a blockbuster year for politics.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent.
When you think of Glastonbury, it's mud you want and music. They're going to cross to us live in a minute.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Brad Pitt is now a prolific producer behind the scenes.
It's not a mystery to me. We always were capable of doing this.
Oh, they're wonderful children as an audience.
Who did that? Maverick here on the red carpet. I'm so excited, Tom Cruise. This is the story of the night.
And it's the little independent film that could.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
Nor have I ever struck any woman in my life.
There's this illusion of power.
Are you feeling well?
I remember covering the Oscars and that now infamous moment, the Will Smith slap. Nobody could quite believe that it had happened. You can tell from these crowds just how excited people are for the return of Pride.
These actors playing the lead roles were born long after the Sex Pistols broke up.
Are you pleased that you did say yes to the job?
I've never regretted it.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world. It can be incredibly surreal being swept up in their world, but we try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
Don't leave me.
Yeah, okay.
There's no easy goodies. There's no easy baddies.
I've had a great time here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
The press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
There's a feeling amongst some commentators that it's not the most respectful timing.
I think there's a word for it, fake news.
I mean, it's wow, wow, wow from Harriet. Delving deeper into the stories with different perspectives on tomorrow's headlines.
We really haven't seen the government getting round the table and negotiating. There are no easy answers to those questions.
The press preview delivering you tomorrow's news tonight on Sky News.
Hello again, everybody. Europe's golfers have regained the Ryder Cup from the USA following 3 days of sporting drama in Rome. It was very big in our house. The European team reached their target of 14.5 points, bringing to an end a tournament which will be remembered for its controversial incidents as much as its golf. Rory McIlroy, he had some incidents, didn't he? And Shane Lowry led chants of USA's terrified as Team Europe's celebration continued late into the night.
This afternoon, this is
Let me tell you about a disabled baseball fan in the US. He wowed spectators when he threw the ceremonial first pitch of a Major League Baseball game with his, well, see. There you go. Tom Willis was born without arms, but that didn't stop him throwing the first pitch, a perfect pitch, having now done so at every single MLB ground. He has been touring the country since 2008 to raise awareness of the abilities of people with disabilities. Tell you about a host of A-list stars. They've called on the government to provide free school meals to all primary school children. Ed Sheeran, Kate Winslet, Olivia Colman and others are among the 90,000 signatories organised by the National Education Union. It says teachers and support staff see the difference a healthy school dinner makes. When children are hungry, they can't learn. It's hard for them to concentrate and harder for them to reach their potential. Free school meals for all would mean every child can learn and succeed. Joined now by Daniel Kebede, General Secretary of the NEU. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme again. Who's going to pay for it?
Well, we would hope that the government would pay for it. It's small change.
Let me ask you a different question then. Where's the money going to come from?
Well, it would come from taxation, ways that government raise revenue, but it really is small change in terms of government spending, Kay. And, you know, we're at Conservative Party conference and they talk very much about levelling up. What we really need to see is some levelling up for our children. Free school meal rollout would lift educational attainment. The DFE's own data and research has found that. It already exists in London. It just needs to be extended throughout the country.
How much would it cost?
Well, the last Labour government last Labour leadership who were committing to the rollout estimated it would be about £1 billion, £1.3 billion. So, as I say, in terms of government spending, really is small change.
OK, and you've got big names that are supporting you. Are they putting their hands in their pocket?
Well, I think this is something on all of us. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. We should all be part of supporting young people. But it really does make a huge difference. I mean, I've been a teacher for 13 years, predominantly in the northeast of England. The real issue is child poverty has risen astronomically over the last decade. And what it does do is lead to a real entire wastage of human creativity. We lose doctors, we lose architects. Children just cannot flourish because hungry children can't learn.
Do you think the government are going to listen, take any notice?
Well, it's about priorities for the government. We've seen government spending increase in other areas, such as defence. We would like to see some spending increases for our children. It is an investment. We need to stop looking at children as a burden and look at it as the investment in the future of our economy, the future of our society.
But do you think that the Prime Minister will listen?
I hope he does.
OK. As far as London is concerned, I chatted to Mayor Khan about this very issue.
Yeah.
Why have you not approached other local mayors? Because it is in their remit.
Well, we are approaching local mayors.
What would you like to say to Andy Burnham, given that we're in Manchester?
Well, we would like to see this taken on by government, because it is really something that we should look to do as a collective across all of us. You know, local authorities, metro mayors, their budgets are far tighter than the Treasury.
OK, so you don't think that the Greater Manchester Mayor should be dipping into the coffers here?
Well, I certainly think if Andy would like to, you know, roll it out here, that's a good start, because what it does do is demonstrate the value of universal free school meals. We'd like to see them. It's also very important to remember that government already pay for free school meals for the first 3 years of education. What we are asking for is an extension of what they're already doing, really.
Good to talk to you. Thanks very much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Thank you very much. Bear with me 1 second if you can't wait to get away. Sun always shines in God's own country, will it today?
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Mix of autumn sunshine, blustery showers this week. Temperatures will gradually rise, leading to a very warm weekend. It's going to be a mild start this morning, low cloud, fog patches and some drizzle for southern parts of Britain. Further north, it'll be fresher with scattered showers.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Mari, how important is this conference for the Conservatives?
It's really important for the Conservatives, especially because last year, I think morale was very low. A lot of Tory MPs didn't even turn up. That was kind of quite a phenomenon in of itself. I think more MPs this year are turning up, but still some are staying away. It's about boosting morale. It's also about funding. As you know, it's about trying to fill those coffers, make sure that the Conservative Party has enough money to campaign for the next election.
We were talking to the Chancellor in the last hour. Some fascinating stuff on triple lock, HS2 and what he's going to do about taxes. Oh, just to point out that Liz Truss is here as well. Oh, yeah. See you soon.
The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Hello everybody, a very good morning from Manchester. It is 8 o'clock and we are live at Conservative Party conference for you. A hint from the Chancellor on the pensions triple lock. But are tax cuts on the horizon? Plus, a thought on HS2. We'll speak to the Mayor of Greater Manchester, that's Andy Burnham, later for his reaction to the Chancellor. Plus, the rail union boss, Mick Lynch, about the latest strikes. It's Monday, the 2nd of October. War on the work side, the Chancellor's warning to some benefit claimants, and also a very heavy hint on what should happen as far as the triple lock is concerned. Will you commit to the triple lock?
Well,
pensions?
You'll hear what we're going to do on that in the autumn statement, but look at our actions today. We have always prioritised that group of people.
Christmas Day levels of cover expected as junior doctors and consultants join forces for a 3-day strike.
Child abduction alert. A 9-year-old girl has gone missing riding her bike in New York State after asking her family if she could do a lap of the park by herself. Search for survivors after a church roof collapses during Sunday Mass in Mexico, killing at least 9 worshippers, including 3 children. Trump trial. The former president indicates he may turn up to the start of his fraud case today and argues his rivals are out to get him. Anybody for another round? How Europe's Ryder Cup winners parted into the night. Hello everybody, a very good morning from the Conservative Party conference right here in Manchester today. All about the economy, and speaking to me this morning, the Chancellor gave a very heavy hint that might please pensioners and that the triple lock could be here to stay. On taxes, he said it's very difficult to see tax cuts for voters coming this year, after a fellow member of the Cabinet said he'd like to see them before the election. Jeremy Hunt is also taking aim at the work shy today, in his words, and those people on benefits not looking for work, saying they don't deserve the same help as those people trying to do the right thing. Here's what he told us.
Do we want to move to lower taxes as soon as we can? Yes, but it means difficult decisions, and we're prepared to take those difficult decisions, both Rishi Sunak and me.
Might we see a headline tax cut before the next election?
Well, I can't tell you what the state of the economy is going to be.
Are you ruling it
going forward? What I can say is that it's very difficult to see having that kind of tax cut this year, for 2 reasons. First,
say that, Chancellor. I said ahead of the next election.
No, but I'm answering the question as accurately as I can. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what is going to be happening with the economy. Right now, public finances don't allow that. Our interest payments are predicted to be much higher than at the spring budget, and it would be inflationary. But if you're asking me, is it something that I'm willing to put us on a path to doing? I do want us to have lower taxes, and I'm prepared to take the difficult decisions to make that happen.
OK, what about those that have worked all their life and have now stepped back? Will you commit to the triple lock?
Well,
pensions?
You'll hear what we're going to do on that in the autumn statement, but look at our actions today. We have always prioritised that group of people.
Mari, what clues was he giving us? Good morning.
Morning. Well, yes, we have always prioritised that group of people. That is what Jeremy Hunt said, and I think that is a huge hint that the triple lock maybe is here to stay. The question is, what kind of triple lock? Is it going to include, if it's in line with wages, is it going to include bonuses or not? So some of the nuances around how exactly they calculate that triple lock is still left open to interpretation, but it sounds like so far they want to create dividing lines between the Tory party and the Labour Party, and they feel like one of those could be the triple lock, and also, obviously, the ongoing row on tax cuts.
Yeah, was he listening, do you think, to what people like Michael Gove is saying? He wants tax cuts for working people, in his words, ahead of the next election?
It didn't sound like it. He kept saying tax cuts are inflationary. If we could give tax cuts this year, that will cause inflation to rise, and we are battling inflation as it is. And he's insisting, essentially, that actually reducing inflation is a better tax cut than any other tax cut because it's so rampant and it ravages people's household budgets. So I think, really, the characterisation is, to an extent, a kind of fairy tale economics that perhaps Michael Gove was asking for, which we know Rishi Sunak has called out from the likes of Liz Truss and others calling for tax cuts last year. They're saying we need to be fiscally responsible and wait for tax cuts in the potentially next year, only potentially.
OK, and we're going to talk about HS2 in more detail in just a little while. When will we hear from the Chancellor, and how important is that speech as far as party conference is concerned?
So we're hearing from the Chancellor at 2 o'clock, so I said that wrong earlier, it's actually 2 o'clock. He's the main event this afternoon, and he's really going to be outlining the kind of fiscal vision of Rishi Sunak and showing that actually under a Rishi Sunak government, and with, obviously, Jeremy Hunt at the helm in the Treasury, they can be economically responsible and find a way to give tax cuts at the right time.
OK, this image that we often see, we've got the autumn statement coming up soon. He said he wouldn't tell me what was in that. Obviously, he also talked about not having a crystal ball. Does Ed have one? Ed Conway with us. Good morning. What did you make of what the Chancellor was saying?
He's quite evasive, wasn't he?
He was evasive, yeah.
He was quite evasive
on
pretty much everything.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, no, you went through everything, and numerous times. I mean, to me, that kind of bespeaks... It's sometimes, I remember conferences where the Tories, in particular, when they were party of government, had quite a lot to announce, big stuff that was announced here. I think the Office for Budget Responsibility was unveiled at at a party conference. This time around, and actually for the last few years, it's been a bit thinner. Obviously, we'll get the national living wage news, but that's something that tends to come around this time of the year anyway. It's not, there's a decision from the National Living Wage Commission that he has to decide whether he's going to take up. There's going to be talk about benefits as well. But, if you talk to people around here, and this is slightly kind of veering into politics rather than economics, a lot of people are kind of just interested in the mood music right now. It doesn't sound like we're going to have a massive flurry of lots of different policies this week that are going to directly change people's lives. Obviously, national living wage is a really big deal, and if it goes up to £11 an hour, or probably over £11 an hour, it's both in line with kind of wage growth, which is a lot at the moment, as we know, and inflation growth. So that's consequential, but it's not like it's kind of outside the normal calendar of things we hear about this time of year.
Triple lock?
Triple lock, and it sounds like that's coming up in the budget as well.
He was keeping it.
It sounds like it, doesn't it? And HS2, it sounds like they've made a decision, because he kept saying announcement rather than decision, didn't he? Which was, I thought, was significant, but that's been quite widely flagged. But clearly they don't want to talk about getting rid of the Manchester link here in Manchester. That's a little bit awkward. But just more broadly, as I say, a lot of people here focused on the kind of mood music.
Just hold that thought, because we want to hear what he said about that, and then I'll come back to you. Here's the Chancellor.
Well, I'm sorry, Kay, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm not going to go into details. Well, let me tell you this, that in terms of things like the northern leg of HS2, whatever decision we make, we will take very careful note of the need to have proper economic infrastructure throughout the whole country. But in terms of this specific decision, I'm afraid you will have to wait.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking you what would be the benefits of keeping it.
Well, you're trying to draw me on what the decision might be.
That's my job.
It is your job, but it's also my job to say that we will make the announcement.
It's your job not to answer the question.
No, it's my job to say we'll make the announcement at the appropriate time, and I promise you we will.
Ed?
I mean, it does sound like they've made a decision, doesn't it? And it's been so widely leaked, and it's a really, really difficult one, because everyone you talk to say, you wouldn't start from here with HS2. It's gone so far over budget. Some people argue that it's just got the wrong route, and these are things that it's way too late at this point to change. It's just so much money. That's the issue, really. But then you can look at other areas where they've already spending lots of money. They're spending a lot of money to support Tata and Jaguar Land Rover with their new gigafactory, spending a lot of money to get Tata and their steelmaking going. So there are various areas where they seem to be willing to spend the money. But it does seem like, and again, back to the politics, this is Rishi Sunak. It's this kind of Rishi being Rishi thing. His instincts are always against big projects like this. His instincts are always against ideas like net zero, where you're kind of committing to something that might be very expensive in the long run. And so I think a lot of people here looking at that and going, oh, well, is this a more sincere Rishi Sunak that connects with the British people. But for me, you know, as someone who covers economics, it's all a bit frustrating because it's a lot of mood music rather than actual substantial stuff that matters for all of us. National living wage, like I say, that is a really significant bit of policy. But it's not something you wouldn't have expected, because we're getting to that time of year when you need to hear what the level is going to be.
And we did clarify with the Chancellor through gritted teeth that these conferences are basically to make money. A lot of business is here. What's the relationship like now between the government and business? Because we all remember what the previous Prime Minister, Butt III, said.
He said a bad word, didn't he?
He did say a very bad word, which we can't say on breakfast telly. Indeed, television at any time.
I mean, you know, weirdly, actually, I think possibly the relationship has worsened since then.
Wow.
And I mean, it hasn't been helped by the fact that, you know, the CBI has big problems of its own. You know, that's our biggest business organisation, and they are they've had an implosion. However, when you talk to businesses, they still say they're not sure what the government really stands for on business. It's not clear to them. They were all very frustrated with what happened with net zero. Remember that there was also an auction for offshore wind. That collapsed as well. And you wouldn't expect, and remember the 2035 deadline or 2030 deadline for petrol cars, that being moved back. Again, the car industry absolutely furious. Not so much necessarily because of the deadline per se, but just because they've been given one message from the government one week and then a totally different message the other week. So I think that relationship is really struggling right now. It's going to be quite interesting to talk to business people here who come here to try and work out what is the government likely to be doing in the future, what are they standing for? And the second thing that's going to be interesting, and we'll probably both be doing a bit of this, is looking around these rooms this week and then comparing them with next week, the Labour Party conference, when they're going to be very, very, you know, charming.
Tails up.
Yeah, exactly. Prawn cocktail offensive all over again. And so that difference of, you know, the potential government in waiting over there and this government where people are kind of, there's a bit of fatigue that you feel around here. But it's still, you know, there's still a year or so or more potentially, or no, about a year till the next election, potentially.
Could be January 2025, I think.
Yeah, that's the limit, yeah. I think what's interesting as well is we know, as you were saying, Ed, Labour is pouring a huge amount of energy into trying to woo business. They are trying to now be the party of business. Rachel Reeves has put a lot of effort into trying to show that if she were to be Chancellor, she would be able to give a lot more clarity and focus to a vision that then business could invest in and business could then kind of get on board with. And that is really what Labour's trying to hone in on as well. And they're trying to kind of beat the Tories at that as well. They're trying to be better for business.
OK. Chancellor speech, 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then, of course, we hear from the Prime Minister later on in the week. Let's see what happens between now and then. Looking forward to your report a little bit later on. See you very soon. Thank you both very much indeed. Sacha Lord, he is a senior businessman here in Manchester. Normally, we talk to him, as we say, down the line. Very shortly, and also a little later in the programme, joined by the Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, and that is Andy Burnham, of course, talking about the government's levelling up plans, and of course HS2, that's at 9:20. Meantime, NHS bosses are warning patients to expect extreme disruption in hospitals this week, with Christmas Day levels of cover expected. Junior doctors and consultants, senior doctors, are joining forces to strike over pay and conditions. Thousands of British Medical Association members started their action this hour. The union says they'll be doing what's called Christmas Day cover. It means only emergency care will be fully staffed over the next 72 hours. Junior doctors and consultants have been offered 6% plus an additional £1,250 for junior doctors. The BMA is asking for a rise of 35% for pay restoration, they say. Strikes have led to more than 1 million appointments and operations being cancelled. And this morning, the BMA has warned that further industrial action might be on the cards.
Well, our mandate extends until the end of February. Our consultant colleagues extend, I think, until around December. We don't have to strike again. This could very well be the last strikes if the government came to the table and were able to put offers to our respective memberships. But of course, if they don't do that, then we do reserve the right to call for action, and we may have to escalate if that's the case.
Standing by for us outside a hospital in Reading this morning. Hello to Matthew, the Royal Berkshire, I think I'm right in saying. Impact there this morning, do you think? Good morning. Oh, I think we've got a problem or two with Matt. We'll go back to him very shortly indeed. Let me take you to New York in the meantime, New York State to be precise. Terrible story reaching us this morning. Police there searching for a 9-year-old girl who they believe was abducted while camping with her family. Charlotte Cena, there she is, was last seen shortly after 6 o'clock on Saturday at Moreau Lake State Park in Saratoga County, 50 miles north of the state capital, that's Albany. Police believe Charlotte is in imminent danger of serious harm. The 9-year-old had been riding a loop of the park with family friends. She said she wanted to do one more lap by herself before bedtime, but she didn't return. Her bike was later discovered. More than 100 people, 75 law enforcement officials have since been deployed in the search.
We are leaving no stone, no branch, no table, no cabin unturned, untouched, unexamined in our search to find Charlotte. We'll keep the members of the public updated. I promised her parents we'll find her daughter. She's all of our daughters. Their family needs love. They need prayers. And if you know anything, if you've seen anything, you hear anything, please contact 911.
Looking at some of today's other headlines for you on The Breakfast Show here on Sky News this Monday morning, live from Conservative Party conference. At least 9 people have died after the roof of a church in Mexico collapsed on worshippers during Sunday Mass. Locals rushed to the scene to try to help dig survivors out with their bare hands. The next pictures, in fact, the pictures we're showing you now, capture the moment the roof collapsed, seen from a distance. Police say about 100 people were in the church at the time of the incident. 3 of those killed were children, with local media reporting that baptisms were scheduled to take place. Reported that around 20 people trapped and 49 taken to hospital. The bishop of the local diocese sent this message to the community.
También las personas que están cerca de ese lugar que puedan colaborar con lo que se está solicitando. Las parroquias, las comunidades, estamos al pendiente también de lo que se pueda ocupar. Les pido su oración, les pido también que podamos estar unidos en un solo corazón ante esta tragedia.
Let's tell you about Donald Trump. He's hinted he'll turn up to his fraud trial in Manhattan today. The state's Attorney General, Letitia James, has accused the former president, his 2 eldest sons, and the entire Trump organization of lying about the value of assets to benefit their business needs. Last week, a district court judge set in motion the prospect of the President Trump, losing his New York business license and forced him to sell all of his New York property. President Trump has said his rivals are out to get him and branded the judge deranged. Mobile phones could soon be banned in England's schools. The Education Secretary, that's Gillian Keegan, of course, will reveal plans to crack down on students using their phones during lessons and during break times. She hopes it'll allow them to focus on their studies. A man's been charged with public order offences after a young football fan, there he is, Bradley, bless him, Bradley Lowry. You remember, he died of cancer. He was mocked at a football match. Dale Horton from Rotherham will appear before Sheffield Magistrates Court this morning. The second man who was arrested has been released on bail. Big hugs for Bradley's family this morning. What's wrong with people? Households in England and Wales could soon see a rise in water bills as companies upgrade their infrastructure to tackle water pollution. Firms are undertaking a 5-year upgrade plan, which could add £156 to annual bills. Turkey says it's carried out a number of airstrikes in northern Iraq. The Defence Ministry said warplanes destroyed 20 targets of suspected Kurdish rebels. It's in response to a suicide bombing near Ankara's Parliament building on Sunday morning. Still to come on the programme, 9:20, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He'll be joining us. That's Andy Burnham. We'll ask him about speculation that the HS2 leg to Manchester will be scrapped. 9:45, speaking to the boss of the RMT union, that's Mick Lynch. Thousands of London Underground workers and also train drivers preparing to walk out this month over pay. Before that, looking at the front pages for you, let's start with the Daily Mirror this morning. Primary school pupils to be given free school meals. The Daily Mail will lead with the Education Secretary's plans to ban mobile phones in schools to limit disruption. The Times looks at doctor strikes facing the NHS and points to the Trust paying well over the odds to cover shifts in hospitals. The Guardian says Tory factions threaten to wreck Sunak's conference. And the Eye also reports on the competition facing the Prime Minister, looking at those jostling for the party's future leadership as the general election approaches. Always love talking to Sacha Lord. He's nighttime economy advisor for Greater Manchester, usually down the line, so I came up to see him. Where is he? Sacha, good morning.
Good morning, Kay, and welcome to Manchester.
Where are you?
I'll be honest, Kay, I'm at a friend's wedding. So, yes, that's why I'm afraid I'm down the line. But you will see me next week, Kay. I'm at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool.
Looking forward to it. What's your reaction to what we heard from the Chancellor this morning?
Well, you know, it's good to hear that we're going to have the wages put up for people, especially in my industry. But, you know, it feels like we're watching words coming out here, Kay, that it's almost as if the government are sticking sand or something like that. They're drowning. And I'm just hoping, I think you're right, it's going to be a different reaction next weekend. I think it's going to be buoyant. And I'm looking forward to it.
HS2. He didn't tell me, the Chancellor, that it had been scrapped, but he might as well have done.
Well, we know it's not going to happen. And we wouldn't be having this conversation, Kate, if it started this in the north. It's a complete and utter fiasco. And I know you've got the mayor on in an hour's time, and he's going to say the same thing. It is appalling. This shows clearly the difference between the north and south. I mean, why? I'm away at the moment in Europe. The train service, if you look at Germany and Italy, and then compare it to the Victorian standards that we have in the north, he said, you know, this should not be an argument. It really shouldn't. And then it's farcical to actually see. I'm a traveller. I frequent the train a lot, Kay, of West, if I'm lucky enough for it to turn up on time. And now that, you know, there's talk of it have to stop 6 miles away from the capital and jump on a taxi. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Complete mismanagement. And, you know, again, this shows the definition of a north-south divide.
Now, I know you've been up to a little bit of mischief, haven't you? You've paid to take over the largest screen in the city centre, which is directly above where the Tory conference is being held. Tell us why.
Well, I had to do it, Kay. You know, my business, I'm the co-founder of Parklife Festival and the Warehouse Project. And during COVID, and you reported on it yourself, so thank you for your support, you know, there were 3.8 million people in the UK. That's bigger than the population of Wales. They've been paying the taxes on time and they got no support whatsoever from the government. And actually, the Prime Minister at the time, he was the Chancellor. He was the one that completely ignored them. So I saw people's marriages break up. I saw homes being repossessed. I sadly know 2 people that took their own lives, you know, that their lives were riddled with debt. And this is a reminder, this is for those 3.8 million people. This is for them because it's an injustice that we just simply cannot forget. And I really, really hope this has brought it back to the table for them.
OK, it's good to talk to you, Sacha. I look forward to seeing you next week in Liverpool. Thanks very much indeed.
Okay.
Before that, though, of course, we have to...
OK, we're having some trouble there from Manchester. We'll work our best to get it back. But let's take a look at the weather for you.
Warm memories wherever you go.
To fly, to fly.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
So we have a mix of autumn sunshine and blustery showers this week. Temperatures will gradually rise, leading to a very warm weekend. It will be a mild start this morning with low cloud, fog patches and some drizzle for southern parts of Britain. Further north, it will be fresher with scattered showers. Now, northwest Scotland will be windy and showery throughout the day, with a few showers spreading to the rest of Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland a bit later. Otherwise, it will be fine here with sunny spells. However, England and Wales will be cloudier with outbreaks of rain. The rain will intensify across parts of Wales and central and southern England through the afternoon and evening, with some heavy and possibly thundery downpours.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Were you England's? You didn't like the sound of my question, did you?
Curse on Sky News.
I'm glad you're back with us here in Manchester. Conservative Party conference, Monday morning breakfast.
Chancellor, today is all about the economy. That's the theme of the day. And what was really interesting from that interview, I put the curse on Sky News when I said that. And it was frustrating because he wouldn't give a lot away. Is Tory party conference is obviously full of Tory members. Tory members never. Rishi Sunak will be acutely aware of that. They voted for Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak is only here because of the MPs. So the people at this conference centre today and this week are not necessarily Rishi Sunak fans. So a way to show them that his economic plan for the future and his vision for the country is something that they can get on board with, despite the fact that, as far as they're concerned, they never voted for him.
That's true. We're going to be hearing from the Chancellor at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Looking forward to hearing from him. Continuing coverage here on Sky News. Do stay tuned our way.
Well, it started off as a project to do a piece of work which would be a composite of, say, 80 portraits and have it as one piece. So from a distance, it would look quite abstract. And then as it got closer, you'll see the sort of personalities of each portrait. And that's a portrait I just did of a friend's dog who passed away last year. So I trained at the Royal Academy and learned. We did a lot of drawing from life, and there was a lot of portraiture as well. So I was inspired by that. My father was an artist, and he did some wonderful portraits. So I suppose it's in my psyche, really. Unfortunately, 10 years ago, my fiancée passed away, Debbie, and she said, if you can do 80, you can do 100. If you can do 100, you can do 200. And she said, you know, you could actually do the city of St. David's. And I just thought, what an amazing idea. And it's sort of her legacy as well. And it's very much, you know, the way I've dealt with bereavement and focusing on people. And I've met some amazing people through it and some wonderful characters. And you get to know a certain sort of facet of their characters, an insight into who they are. And it's done me the power of good. And I just absolutely adore doing them. My philosophy is just to carry on doing it. I love doing them so much, and it sort of centres me, and it's something, as I said earlier on, a focal point for me. And it sort of, so by next year, I hope to achieve 1,000. Well, I don't hope, I will achieve 1,000. So that seems a considerable number to exhibit.
5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Welcome back. Our top stories this morning. The Chancellor tells Kay Burley it's very difficult to see tax cuts for voters coming this year and denied that he's seeking to make cuts to the public sector, recommitted to the pension triple lock. Junior doctors and consultants have begun a 72-hour walkout over NHS pay, and they will be operating what's called Christmas Day cover, staffing just emergency departments. Police in New York State have begun a huge search for a 9-year-old girl who went missing while riding her bike near a campsite after asking her family if she could do a lap of the park by herself. Now, a heavy hint from the Chancellor that the government will recommit to the pensions triple lock, but a cautious tone from Jeremy Hunt on any potential tax cuts this year. That was the topic that dominated day one of the Tory party conference on Sunday, but one that looks to divide the party. Tamara Cohen reports.
Are we going to see tax cuts before the next election?
The burning question for Conservatives. When is the financial squeeze going to ease?
Is your cabinet united, Prime Minister?
And they don't seem to be of one voice.
I would like to see the tax burden reduced before the next election.
While Michael Gove wants tax cuts now, the Chancellor says there's virtually no chance until inflation is under control. Today, Jeremy Hunt will make his keynote speech, saying the government is on track to halve inflation and will raise the minimum wage to £11 an hour from next year. It's a crucial conference for Rishi Sunak, his first as leader and likely his last before a general election. It's clear that Tories here want to see more of a vision if he's to have any chance of turning things around. Lots of questions, but few answers from the Prime Minister's top team.
Where are we going? Do you think we should have tax cuts before the election? Would you like to see that? Before the election? Is the Cabinet divided about tax cuts? Is the party divided about tax cuts?
We're not.
No? Do you think we should have them before the next election?
Well, we'll see. That's a matter for the Chancellor, the Prime Minister.
Today, the ghosts of Conservative past will be back. Liz Truss will address a rally calling for tax cuts for businesses. Her allies are feeling restless.
The Tory party has always been the party of low taxation and sound money, and sometimes there is a tension between them. But overall, we need tax cuts and we need economic growth. And I think the autumn statement/budget is a time to say, this is what we are doing on this particular tax.
A year ago, Truss's premiership was in its final throes. Rishi Sunak has tried to steady the ship. He needs this conference to show there is a course, however narrow, to victory. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Manchester.
Today is all about the economy, and speaking to Kay Burley on Sky News Breakfast, the Chancellor gave a heavy hint that might please pensioners that the triple lock could be here to stay. Well, on taxes, he said he wants to see cuts for working people, but admitted it's very difficult to see tax cuts for voters coming this year, after a fellow member of the Cabinet said he'd like to see them before the election. Jeremy Hunt is also taking aim at those people on benefits not looking for work, saying they don't deserve the same help as those people trying to do the right thing. Here's what he told Kay Burley.
Do we want to move to lower taxes as soon as we can? Yes, but it means difficult decisions, and we're prepared to take those difficult decisions, both Rishi Sunak and me.
Might we see a headline tax cut before the next election?
Well, I can't tell you what the state of the economy is going to be.
Are you ruling it
going forward? What I can say is that it's very difficult to see having that kind of tax cut this year for two reasons. First,
say that, Chancellor. I said ahead of the next election.
No, but I'm answering the question as accurately as I can. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what is going to be happening with the economy. Right now, public finances don't allow that. Our interest payments are predicted to be much higher than at the spring budget, and it would be inflationary. But if you're asking me, is it something that I'm willing to put us on a path to doing. I do want us to have lower taxes, and I'm prepared to take the difficult decisions to make that happen.
OK, what about those that have worked all their life and have now stepped back? Will you commit to the triple lock on pensions?
You'll hear what we're going to do on that in the autumn statement, but look at our actions to date. We have always prioritised that group of people.
Let's get more on the strikes facing the NHS this week. Junior doctors and consultants are walking out over pay and conditions. NHS bosses are warning patients to expect extreme disruption in hospitals. Well, among the procedures that have been delayed this week are elective C-sections. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has been speaking to one expectant mother who says she feels she's lost all control after being told her operation simply won't be possible.
I feel like I've now lost all control of the birth.
We're protecting Lisa's identity by using an actor to tell her story. She's almost 39 weeks pregnant and has a pre-existing condition. There are concerns about the size of her baby. So with her midwife, she had planned to have an elective caesarean section.
I felt a huge relief at this decision. I have since been told that it's not possible to book the C-section because of the strikes. The earliest replacement date is more than a week after my due date. I think I'll be pushed for an induction before my C-section booking if I've not gone into labour.
One Trust chief executive has confirmed to Sky News that the industrial action is impacting its ability to provide elective caesarean births. Matthew Hopkins, who runs Mid and South Essex NHS Foundation Trust, said, "We raised this issue as we take delays to planned caesarean births very seriously. Our first concern is the safety of women and birthing people and their babies, and all options are considered by our clinical teams before postponing planned caesarean births." The BMA has told Sky News that the vast majority of hospitals have rearranged their work either side of industrial action, and that specialist consultants are used to reprioritising how and when women are scheduled for induction of labour or caesarean section based on changing circumstances. The Department of Health says it's committed to making the NHS the safest place in the world to give birth for all women, and that during industrial action, the NHS will prioritise resources to protect emergency care and neonatal and maternity services.
I am certain I do not want to be induced.
But, as Lisa's case shows, there are concerns that this isn't really happening. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
And I felt huge relief at this decision.
NHS bosses are warning patients to expect this extreme disruption then, and they're calling it on level with Christmas Day cover. So what does that mean for patients? Well, joining me now is Charlotte Bauer, the emergency department matron at the Royal Berkshire Hospital. That's in Reading. Very good morning. Thanks for joining us on Sky News Breakfast. Your first thoughts then on those expectant mothers who are being told that their C-sections, their elective C-sections, are to be cancelled or delayed? OK, really sorry, we're having a few technical issues here at Sky News today, but we will bring you those guests and reconnect with Kay Burley at the Conservative Party conference that's still going ahead this week. So the strike from junior doctors and consultants started at 7 o'clock this morning, and we'll be bringing you the impact of that throughout breakfast. But let's move on to some of the day's other news now. And a teenager who was on a bus that crashed on the M53 on Friday has told Sky News of the trauma the incident has left behind. 15-year-old Jessica Baker and the driver, Stephen Shrimpton, both died when the coach overturned on the motorway. Our North of England correspondent, Shingi Marike, talked to a boy who was on the same bus who wants to remain anonymous. A Sky News producer has voiced his words.
We were all just chatting on our phones. Then all of a sudden, nothing seemed real. Like I stood up because I felt something really weird. Then all of a sudden, I'm getting thrown to the side. The bus has tipped. Nothing felt real.
It was a trip to school that started as normal, before turning into a tragedy. This teenager walked away from an accident on the M53 motorway We have revoiced the pupil using a Sky News producer to protect his identity.
I looked around and there's just people lying down everywhere. Bags are everywhere. There's glass everywhere. And it's just like blood everywhere. I've seen both my mates on the floor, but I thought they were dead. I looked around again and saw a girl stood next to me. I was in shock. I put my hand on my face and I looked back at my hand and it was covered in blood. I remember saying, like, this can't be my blood.
The crash left 2 people dead and another with life-changing injuries. His picture of the aftermath, a haunting reminder. He's incredibly lucky to still be alive. 15-year-old Jessica Baker, who he knew, is one of those who lost their lives. Something he feels hasn't sunk in.
I was just in shock. I couldn't believe it because obviously it could have been me in that position. She's basically my age, really, and then it's just a horrible thing to think about.
In their first statement since her death, Jessica's family said, Jessica was a warm-hearted, wonderful daughter, granddaughter and niece, devoted sister and loyal friend. A talented climber based at the Boardroom Climbing Centre Academy, where she helped coach younger climbers and competed around the country, inspiring others. Her untimely death has led to a massive void in our lives that will never be filled. Jessica's school called her unequivocally kind and empathetic, a conscientious student who exemplified their value. This student wants to join those paying tribute to her when he can, but right now he's dealing with both the physical and emotional impact of what happened that day.
We were on the motorway going somewhere. Water hit the screen pretty fast. I nearly broke down in the car because it was horrible.
Dealing with that trauma will take some time, and going back to school will be hard.
A couple of hours after it happened, when I was sat upstairs, I'd realised it was crazy. I still don't know how, I got up so quick and things like that, and I don't know how I weren't, screaming, crying. I think I was subconsciously happy to be alive, happy to be where I am now.
Shingimi Arike, Sky News, The Wirral.
Hello again, everybody. We are back in Manchester. No idea what's going on this morning, but I'm pleased to be able to tell you that not only have we been chatting to the Chancellor today, also joined by Giles Wilkes, former economic advisor to Theresa May. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. And Sonia Khan. How are you, Sonia?
Yeah, very well. Thanks.
Very well. Remember what happened to you. Totally unexpected and unappreciated by women everywhere, let me just say. Talk to me about what you thought about the Chancellor this morning.
Well, I thought it was really interesting. One thing I was talking to Giles about was there's a feeling at conference that there's a new target voter for the Conservatives, and they're labelling it the grey wall. So this is the idea that sort of people who don't have a mortgage, or a little bit older, who are thinking about...
We prefer to say more experience in this programme.
Yes,
Thank
sorry.
you.
It was just such an interesting term. I hadn't heard it before. And the Conservatives are going back to their roots, actually, and focusing now on their target voters. So this is where we hear that actually the pensions triple lock might stay, that inheritance tax might be reformed, and in quite a positive way. So one, I thought that was interesting. I think two was the fact that the Chancellor is definitely speaking to the right of the party, the grassroots, with his quite hardline messaging on you've got to work now or you'll be sanctioned. We're going to increase pay, but it sort of comes at a cost. You've got to find that job first. So that's the furthest right I've ever seen him. And I think the fact that he's speaking to his core might suggest that we're entering this general election territory.
Oh, how interesting. Giles, interesting to hear from the Chancellor when he was talking about the triple lock. I thought I'd just fly that kite, see what he would say. And basically, he's saying they're going to keep it.
Yeah,
again, appealing to the more experienced generation.
Yes. Which, yes, is very much an election strategy. I wouldn't say it's an election-winning strategy, because those are the people that do vote Conservative and always will vote Conservative. They need the sort of 10 or 15% of the young that vote Conservative to go up to like 20 or 25%, and they're not going to do it with policies like that. And I also don't think they will do it with policies that are fundamentally negative, like we're going to go harder after benefits cheese to raise the employment rate by 50,000 people, or we're going to scrap this potentially wonderful train line that was such a positive vision that previous prime ministers have produced. So I'm really surprised that this is his big growth pitch, because I thought Jeremy Hunt wanted to move from being the negative guy who controlled the chaos that was around last year to the positive guy with a vision for things that, you know, might make us feel better about the future.
Yeah, it's toast, isn't it, HS2?
Well, I hope not, as someone who comes from the West Midlands, because I think actually the bigger challenge beyond whether it will happen or not is what happens to the investment in the areas that have been promised HS2. So you go to somewhere like Birmingham, HSBC set up their headquarters. There are lovely hotels now. Lots of people have been employed there, and it will be the same in Manchester and other parts of the country. So if they're told that the line's not running anymore, what happens to all of that money, all of the jobs, all of the skills that have been bought? Do they just disappear? Do they go to another country? I think that's sort of a big question that hasn't really been answered or really spoken about.
Yeah, I mean, and we've both been in a position where we needed to talk to investors about why you need to come to the UK and why the government has got a really good vision for you and why we're going to stick at things. I wouldn't like to be in the position of the next advisor to the Prime Minister on business, trying to explain, yes, you've got to come here and believe in us and we've got a positive vision, while explaining why we're leaving these great dirty holes in the ground, not completing things, leaving annoyed people up and down the country, people who've changed their whole career in order to do it. It's just an incredibly negative vision.
What about the split, potentially? Early days in the cabinet, and I'm referring specifically to Michael Gove yesterday, saying that he wanted to see cuts for ordinary working people ahead of the next election. I put that to the Chancellor, he wouldn't commit.
I think it's really fascinating, and this is the crux of the challenge facing Rishi Sunak, that there is no one sort of element of conservatism that he's challenging. There's no Sunakism. We don't know if he's pro-small state, big state, if he's pro sort of, you know, reducing business taxes or reducing kind of personal taxes, and I think that's a decision for him. It's not a case of the cabinet making the decision. They're allowed to have different views, but I think he's got to set the central strategy now. He's got to tell us what he stands for. I think you asked the Chancellor a good question of what are people voting for you for, and I think you've got to ask that question.
Didn't answer it, did he?
He didn't. I think that's the challenge. How do you get your party behind you? He needs to set the expectation.
Yeah, and I would slightly disagree in that. I say that Rishi Sunak has made his position on economics relatively clear in a speech that nobody else seems to have read from February 2022, because it was on the day of the Ukraine invasion, where he said really clearly to his party, you don't cut taxes until you've dealt with the deficit and you've dealt with things like inflation.
Or you get a general election.
Yeah, and this is Nigel Lawson's approach, and I think Rishi Sunak wants to be the next kind of Nigel Lawson if he'd become Prime Minister. So he's tried to hold that line. I think he tried to yesterday, and I think he's sort of right to there. It's irresponsible to try and cut taxes when you haven't dealt with those other things.
When's the next general election going to be?
We were talking about this. I mean, it sounds like you would keep it off for as long as possible and maybe go for maybe a gloomy November when people perhaps aren't enthused about voting if you're not doing very well in the polls. So I think late.
Yeah, I agree. I think the risk of going in May is it's a time when everyone's feeling optimistic and people vote for change. 1979, 97, 2010, all May elections. They should be really terrified of that kind of thing happening. So I think they're going to go for the deepest, darkest point in the winter when people are feeling nervous.
Which, of course, is what Boris Johnson did previously. It was a December election, wasn't it?
Yeah.
OK, let's see. For now, thanks very much indeed, guys. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll chat again before the end of the week. Look forward to it. Thank you. Still to come on the programme for you, there's a new show launching on Sky News later on tonight, and it involves my lovely colleague Sarah Jane. Tell you all about it in just a moment.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. When you think of Glastonbury, it's mud you want and music. They're going to cross to us live in a minute. Thank you so much. Brad Pitt is now a prolific producer behind the scenes.
It's not a mystery to me. We always were capable of doing this.
Oh, they're wonderful children as an audience.
Who did that? Maverick here on the red carpet. I'm so excited, Tom Cruise. This is the story of the night.
It's the little independent film that could.
We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
Nor have I ever struck any woman in my life.
There's this illusion of power.
Are you feeling well?
I remember covering the Oscars and that now infamous moment, the Will Smith slap. Nobody could quite believe that it happened. You can tell from these crowds just how excited people are for the return of Pride.
These actors playing the lead roles were born long after the Sex Pistols broke up.
Are you pleased that you did say yes to the job?
I've never regretted it.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world. It can be incredibly surreal being swept up in their world, but we try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
Okay, I'll talk to you.
Don't leave me.
Yeah, okay.
There's no easy goodies. There's no easy baddies.
I've had a great time here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
The press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
There's a feeling amongst some commentators that it's not the most respectful timing.
I think there's a word for it, fake news.
I mean, it's wow from Harriet. Delving deeper into the stories with different perspectives on tomorrow's headlines.
We really haven't seen the government getting round the table and negotiating. There are no easy answers to those questions.
The press preview delivering you tomorrow's news tonight on Sky News.
Hello again, everybody. Douglas Ross is with us. One region that everyone will have their eyes on ahead of next year's general election, we think it's next year, is Scotland, after what's been a somewhat turbulent year for the SNP. As I said, Mr Ross is here with us. Hi, it's good to see you. How important is Scotland come the next election, whenever that might be?
Yeah, well, obviously it's crucial, and the Scottish Conservatives have built up a number of seats there in recent years. We are looking forward to a good election. Whenever that is called, it's very clear that in many seats across Scotland, it's the Scottish Conservatives that are the only party that are challenging the SNP. We had a very recent by-election where our vote went up by 20% in a council by-election because people could see our candidate was the best placed person to take on the SNP.
You are confident that you're going to do better than Labour in Scotland?
I'm confident we're going to make gains in Scotland. We're going to hold on to the seats we've currently got, and I think we can make gains. So I'm not going to look at what the other parties may or may not do, but I'm very confident that the Scottish Conservatives can have a good result in the next election.
Do you believe that Scotland should ever be able to vote again on independence?
Well, we've had that vote. We had it in 2014, and we were told then that it was a gold standard of independence referendums and both sides would respect the result. And sadly, one side has refused to respect the result and has agitated for independence ever since.
So in answer to my question?
Well, I'm never going to advocate for another independence referendum or for Scottish independence because I don't believe in it. But what I don't think the priority right now should be another referendum. But Humza Yousaf has told people across Scotland he's going to make it line 1, page 1 of his manifesto. And I think that is completely the wrong priority at the worst possible time.
What do people in Scotland think about the Rosebank oil field?
Well, very popular in terms of the investment.
It's not very green, is it?
Well, it is actually. If you look at the carbon footprint of importing oil and gas, it's better to get it as close to home as possible.
But we're not going to use that,
well,
are we?
We are
We're going to export that, aren't we?
We have.
Or am I wrong?
Well, we are exporting some of it, yes, that's absolutely clear.
What percentage?
But I don't have the percentage off the top of my head, but what we do have is vital jobs in the North Sea that are crucial to the North East economy, 100,000 jobs across the whole of the United Kingdom. And I want to see those jobs held here in the UK, held here in Scotland, and that oil produced as close to home as possible, rather than importing it from foreign countries at a higher cost that we don't get the benefit from the jobs, and it does have a higher carbon footprint.
So this government is a green government?
Yes, you know, we've got to ensure energy security is a top
priority. Why have you
priority.
pushed back the sale of diesel cars?
Because I think it's actually, I think it's right that we take the public with us on this. The ultimate aim of net zero by 2050 hasn't changed, but the way we get there is more proportionate, and it's more honest with the public about how we do that. And I think also the alignment with the rest of, or much of the rest of Europe. A lot of these vehicles will come in from Europe, and therefore our alignment to 2035 with other countries who are producing a lot of these vehicles actually makes sense.
Why is the Prime Minister so unpopular?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that.
Well, yes, the polls are suggesting it's at his lowest ever, minus 45 points or something.
He is getting things done. So we've seen in Scotland, you know, one of his first announcements was 2 free ports for Scotland. That was Scotland's 2 governments actually working together. He was back up in Scotland to announce the carbon capture storage facility and the plans for that. He's just invested £1.1 billion in 55 towns across the UK, 7 of which are in Scotland, one in my own constituency of Murray and Elgin. That's a lot of investment coming from the UK government, and I think we're going to see more of that from Rishi Sunak during this conference, and people can see he gets stuff done. He says what he's going to do, he gets it done, and he's someone that I think more and more people will see he's the Prime Minister that takes us through the next general election and on to that 5th election victory.
Thanks for bearing with us with the gremlins.
Thank
we really appreciate it. Take care. Thanks a lot. Something new coming to Sky News this very evening. Here to tell you all about it is Sarah Jane. Hi, Sarah Jane, from Manchester. Tell us more.
Hiya, Kay. Yes, this feels like my elevator pitch, because I know we've only got a couple of minutes before we go off air. The UK Tonight launches here on Sky News at 8 o'clock tonight, and you'll know well from the Conservative Party conference that we know what the politicians want us to be talking about. But on this show, we want to know what the people of the UK are talking about. We'll concentrate on that, the issues up and down the country. We launched tonight with some of our fantastic original and investigative journalism from our home editor, Jason Farrell. He's been taking a look behind the scenes at a UK prison, and he's been speaking exclusively to prison officers who basically say it's the prisoners running the show. It's a shocking report. We'll have that exclusively. First look at that tonight at 8 o'clock. NHS strikes as well this week. We'll be hearing from doctors and patients, and from one family who are left counting the cost of what is a fractured NHS service. Lots of great things as well, because we know there's a lot of could do better in the UK, but there's a lot of brilliant stuff to celebrate as well. Science and tech, arts and entertainment, sports, big name interviews. We'll have it all. We launch tonight at 8 o'clock on Sky News, so join us if you can.
Looking forward to it, Sarah Jane. Thanks very much indeed. 8 o'clock this evening on Sky News. Before that, 7 o'clock, of course, we have Sophie Ridge with her new show as well, The Politics Hub, coming up in just a few moments' time. Continuing coverage here from Manchester of the Conservative Party conference here on The Breakfast Show on Sky News. Particularly, we did an interview with the Chancellor in the last hour. What did he have to say about HS2 and taxes? Stay tuned and find out. Hello everybody, a very good morning from Manchester. It is 9 o'clock and we are live at the Conservative Party conference. A hint from the Chancellor on the pensions triple lock, but are tax cuts on the horizon? Plus a thought on HS2. We'll speak to the Mayor of Greater Manchester, that's Andy Burnham, for his reaction to the Chancellor, plus the rail union boss, that's Mick Lynch, about the latest strikes. It's Monday, the 2nd of October. War on the work shy, the Chancellor's warning to some benefits claimants, and a heavy hint on this programme about taxes and the pensions triple lock. Will you commit to the triple lock?
Well,
pensions?
You'll hear what we're going to do on that in the autumn statement, but look at our actions today. We have always prioritised that group of people.
Christmas Day levels of cover are expected as junior doctors and consultants join force to strike. Child abduction alert. A 9-year-old girl goes missing riding her bike in New York State after asking her family if she could do a lap of the park by herself. Search for survivors after a church roof collapses during Sunday Mass in Mexico, killing at least 9, including 3 children. Trump trial. The former president indicates he may turn up to the start of his fraud case today and argues his rivals are out to get him. Anyone for another round? How Europe's Ryder Cup winners partied into the night. Hi everyone, good morning from the Conservative Party conference here in Manchester. Today, all about the economy. And speaking to me this morning, the Chancellor gave a heavy hint that might please pensioners and that the triple lock could be here to stay. On taxes, he said he wants to see cuts for working people, but admitted it's very difficult to see tax cuts for voters coming this year, after a fellow member of the Cabinet said he'd like to see them before the next election. Jeremy Hunt is also taking aim at those people on benefits not looking for work, saying they don't deserve the same help as those people trying to do the right thing. Here's what he said. Will you commit to the triple lock?
Well,
pensions?
You'll hear what we're going to do on that in the autumn statement, but look at our actions today. We have always prioritised that group of people.
I'm glad you brought up taxes because, as you know, Michael Gove was speaking to Trevor Phillips just yesterday about this very subject. And he says, Michael Gove, senior Tory, he wants tax cuts for working people. Do you agree with him?
I would love to see tax cuts for working people. I'd love to see tax cuts for everyone.
Tell me what that would look like.
Well, let me answer your question.
Do.
At the moment, if we...
Please do.
Thank you. I'm always happy to answer your questions.
No, you're not, Chancellor. I asked you about HS2 and you won't tell me.
Yes, just because it's not the appropriate time. We haven't made that announcement. But let me tell you, when it comes to tax cuts, if we gave big tax cuts now, that would put more money in people's pockets and that would be inflationary. And right now, we are in a big battle, which is succeeding, to bring down inflation. It was over 11% when I became Chancellor. It's now under 7%. And the fastest way that we can help working families, the people that Michael Gove was talking about, if we halve inflation, that's not a 1p in the pound tax cut. That's 5 pence in the pound boost to their income. That's the fastest thing we can do, and nothing is going to compromise that battle. But do we want to move to lower taxes as soon as we can? Yes, but it means difficult decisions, and we're prepared to take those difficult decisions, both Rishi Sunak and me.
Might we see a headline tax cut before the next election?
Well, I can't tell you what the state of the economy is going to be.
Are you ruling it
going forward? What I can say is that it's very difficult to see having that kind of tax cut this year, for 2 reasons.
First, say that, Chancellor. I said ahead of the next election.
No, but I'm answering the question as accurately as I can. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what is going to be happening with the economy. Right now, public finances don't allow that. Our interest payments are predicted to be much higher than at the spring budget, and it would be inflationary. But if you're asking me, is it something that I'm willing to put us on a path to doing? I do want us to have lower taxes, and I'm prepared to take the difficult decisions to make that happen.
Murray's here. That was a yes, I think, wasn't it?
It sounded like it, didn't it, Kay? I think he said I was prepared to make the difficult decisions needed. What's really interesting is that was a really huge hint that we expect the Tories to keep the triple lock. They know that a lot of their voters come from a slightly older generation, and therefore it would be electorally, politically savvy to do that. But also, when it comes to the kind of ongoing row about tax cuts, for instance, we have a situation where Jeremy Hunt gave a bit of a hint to you this morning. He said, we can't have tax cuts this year, that would be inflationary, so calling what Michael Gove is potentially calling for inflationary, but he did leave the door open to maybe tax cuts next year, depending on OBR forecasts and the health of the economy. So I think that will be one to watch to see whether, potentially before the next election, like you pushed him on, whether they can try and find a way to drive those tax cuts through and how they would find the money. But there's also always a wider question about the workforce when it comes to their announcements around benefits and around the living wage, trying to push people into work. The real question is, why are we getting sicker? People being out of work because of long-term sickness is costing our economy a huge amount of money, and the Labour Party are arguing that they would get to the root of the problem, which is NHS backlog.
OK. Also, actually, I pushed him on HS2. Obviously, Rishi Sunak wants to focus on the economy this week, but under growing pressure to make a decision about the northern leg of HS2. Is it going to go ahead or not? What does the Chancellor think?
Well, I'm sorry, Kay, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm not going to go into details. Well, let me tell you this, that in terms of things like the northern leg of HS2, whatever decision we make, we will take very careful note of the need to have proper economic infrastructure throughout the whole country. But in terms of this specific decision, I'm afraid you will have to wait.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking you what would be the benefits of keeping it.
Well, you're trying to draw me on what the decision might be.
That's my job.
It is your job, but it's also my job to say that we will make the announcement.
It's your job not to answer the question.
No, it's my job to say we'll make the announcement at the appropriate time, and I promise you we will.
Oh, so frustrating.
Unbelievably frustrating, Kay, and not just for me and you watching, but actually for the people of Manchester and the people across the UK who want to know, is it happening, is it not happening? Just tell us. Exactly, and I think that is what people are feeling right now, is just say it, get it out the way. If you're going to scrap it, then just say you're going to scrap it and we can move on and deal with the fallout. And I think that is the frustration with the government right now. Now, we know that sources have been telling Sky News that a decision is still very much 50-50, although he's made it sound like it was very much had been decided and it was really a case of wait for the announcement, but the announcement is coming. So I think there seems to be a bit of movement on the fact that maybe a decision has finally been made, but he wouldn't again give you any clarity on that. And also, we still don't know for sure if there's going to be a cabinet meeting today. There's been whispers about that.
Will they be coming by train?
Well, that would be ideal, but the question is, can they get there by train? That's the real question, because we know with train strikes as well as the scrapping of HS2, train infrastructure across the UK is a really big problem, and travel is a really big problem. And I think the worry for Rishi Sunak is he is seen as a Prime Minister that is going to be prioritising motorists. We know we're going to be hearing more about motorists today, and less about public sector, public transport infrastructure, which is obviously potentially better for the environment.
OK, let's see. For now, Mari, thanks so much indeed. Just a few seconds' time. Speaking about HS2 with the Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, of course. And then a few moments after that, we'll be chatting. In fact, why don't we do it now? Let's chat to our business presenter, Ian King, who's standing by for us. Your programme at 11:30. Ian, any thoughts on what we've heard from the Chancellor so far today?
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised that he's ruling out tax cuts in the way that he did, because, frankly, there is no money, to coin a phrase famously used by Liam Byrne when the coalition came to power back in 2010. I mean, just last month, in August, which is the latest month for which figures are available, the government borrowed £11.6 billion. That was up £3.5 billion on August last year. It was the fourth highest August borrowing on record. For the first 5 months of this financial year, the government borrowed £69.6 billion. That was up £19.3 billion on the first 5 months of the financial year last year. So the government's borrowing is still really ratcheting up at an eye-watering pace, partly because of the higher level of inflation, and that impacts on the interest payments made on the national debt. So he's right to be very, very cautious. The Conservative MPs will say, well, hang on, the borrowing at this stage is less than the Office for Budget Responsibility responsibility was forecasting. But the OBR is going to be upgrading its numbers ahead of the autumn statement, and I suspect at that point they will say there is very little room for manoeuvre indeed. So you're going to carry on getting this clamour for tax cuts from Conservative backbenchers. But the truth of the matter is the government is, as I say, borrowing money at an absolutely eye-watering pace.
While I've got you, I know that you have been looking into the cost of water bills. I've just paid the second half of my bill, but I think the prices are going to go up still further, aren't they?
Well, what's happened today is that the water industry has submitted its business plans for the next regulatory period, which begins in April 2025. It's a 5-year plan running out to 2030. And in aggregate, the industry wants to invest some £96 billion. That compares with £51 billion in the current 5-year regulatory period that we're in at the moment. Now, some of the money will be put up by shareholders, and indeed Severn Trent on Friday raised £1 billion from its shareholders towards its spending plans. But the industry's proposals would also see bills going up by £84 a year on average. Now, it's worth pointing out that water bills in this country are among the lowest in Europe, and that's part of the problem, because essentially the industry has not invested as much as it would have liked to in the past. That's why you have all these issues with sewage spills and river pollution. And that's specifically what they're targeting with these business plans. They want to raise money in order to invest in the clear up. The regulator will decide on how much that they can spend. But basically, the issue for the regulator is that it's made keeping bills low its priority over recent decades, rather than allowing the water companies to spend what they wanted on sewage. And that's why you're now seeing this big ratcheting up in spending proposals, because it's moved to the top of the agenda, if you like, with consumers.
OK, we'll look forward to seeing more from you at 11:30 and 4:30 today. Ian Finai, thank you. Meantime, let's tell you about what the doctors are up to. Bosses warning patients to expect extreme disruption in hospitals this week, with Christmas Day levels of cover expected. Junior doctors and senior doctors, consultants, are joining forces to strike over pay and conditions. Thousands of British Medical Association members started their action in the 7 o'clock hour. The union says they'll be doing what's called Christmas Day cover. It means only emergency care will be fully staffed over the next 72 hours. Junior doctors and consultants have been offered 6% pay rise, plus an additional £1,250 for junior doctors. The BMA is asking for a rise of 35%. Strikes have led to more than 1 million appointments and operations being cancelled. And this morning, the BMA has warned that further industrial action might be on the cards.
Well, our mandate extends until the end of February. Our consultant colleagues extend, I think, until around December. We don't have to strike again. This could very well be the last strikes if the government came to the table and were able to put offers to our respective memberships. But of course, if they don't do that, then we do reserve the right to call for action, and we may have to escalate if that's the case.
Speak to our correspondent Matthew Thompson, who is outside Reading's Royal Berkshire Hospital for us this morning. Hello to you, Matt. What's happening there? Good morning.
Good morning, Kay. Well, look, it's extreme disruption right across the country. We've just been inside accident and emergency, and there were something like 50 patients waiting inside for treatment. I'm told for this time on a Monday morning, that's rather a lot. Now, on one hand, that's quite a good thing, because it shows that in spite of the strike action, people are still coming to hospital. And that's one of the key takeaways from this morning. If you do need emergency care, there are still staffing levels. You can come to A&E or call 999. On the other hand, it's evidence of the extreme pressure that's already on the NHS at a time when we stand on the verge of really the most disruptive strike action in NHS history. Last month, both junior doctors and consultants walked out together for the very first time, but it was only for 24 hours. As of today, they're striking together for 3 full days. And that is going to cause, in the words of NHS bosses, most non-emergency care to be brought to a complete standstill. I was speaking to one admin member of staff here at Royal Berkshire Hospital who told me that they've been calling patients to cancel or change appointments, in some cases for the 7th or 8th time. Waiting lists, we know, are ballooning. And I was just speaking to one senior nurse inside A&E who said part of the problem is because this strike action is indefinite, it could go on, not indefinite, until February at least, it's impossible to plan rotas because you're not just planning for this disruption, but the next one, the next one, the next one, and staff, frankly, are tired, exhausted, and morale is sapping away.
OK, Matt, thanks. Let's tell you about other news, terrible news from New York State this morning. Police there are searching for a 9-year-old girl who they believe was abducted while camping with her family. Charlotte Cena was last seen shortly after 6 o'clock on Saturday night at Moreau Lake State Park in Saratoga County, 50 miles north of the state capital, that's Albany. Police believe Charlotte is in imminent danger of serious harm. The 9-year-old had been riding a loop of the park with family and friends. She said she wanted to do one more lap by herself before tea, but didn't return. Her bike was later found. More than 100 people and 75 officers have since been deployed in the search.
We are leaving no stone, no branch, no table, no cabin unturned, untouched, unexamined in our search to find Charlotte. We'll keep the members of the public updated. I promised her parents we'll find her daughter. She's all of our daughters. Their family needs love. They need prayers. And if you know anything, if you've seen anything, you hear anything, please contact 911.
At least 9 people have died after the roof of a church in Mexico collapsed on worshippers during Sunday Mass. Locals rushed to the scene to try to help dig survivors out with their bare hands. The next pictures we're going to show you capture the moment the roof collapse was seen from a distance. Police say about 100 people were in the church at the time of the incident. 3 of those killed were children, with local media reporting that baptisms were scheduled to take place at the church. Donald Trump has hinted he'll turn up to his fraud trial in Manhattan later on today, which begins. The state's Attorney General, that's Letitia James, has accused the former president, his 2 eldest sons, and the entire Trump organization of lying about the value of assets to benefit their business needs. Last week, a district court judge set in motion the prospect of President Trump losing his New York business license and force him to sell all of his New York property. President Trump has said his rivals are out to get him and branded the judge deranged. A man's been charged with a public order offence after a young football fan, there he is, Bradley, we love him, don't we, Bradley Larry. Sadly, he died of cancer. He was mocked at a match. Dale Horton from Rotherham will appear before Sheffield Magistrates Court this morning. A second man who was arrested has been released on bail. Europe's golfers have regained the Ryder Cup from the USA following 3 days of sporting drama in Rome. The European team reached their target of 14.5 points, bringing to an end a tournament which will be remembered for its controversial incidents as much as its golf. Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry, lead chants of USA is terrified as Team Europe's celebration continued late into the night and early into the following morning. Still to come, we're going to be speaking to the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, of course, as the northern leg of HS2 hangs in the balance. That's come in just a moment.
Well, it started off as a project to do a piece of work which would be a composite of, say, 80 portraits and have it as one piece. So from a distance, it would look quite abstract. And then as you got closer, you'll see the sort of personalities of each portrait. And that's a portrait I just did of a friend's dog who passed away last year. So I trained at the Royal Academy and learned. We did a lot of drawing from life, and there was a lot of portraiture as well. So I was inspired by that. My father was an artist, and he did some wonderful portraits. So I suppose it's in my psyche, really. Unfortunately, 10 years ago, my fiancée passed away, Debbie, and she said, if you can do 80, you can do 100. If you can do 100, you can do 200. And she said, you know, you could actually do the city of St. David's. And I just thought, what an amazing idea. And it's sort of her legacy as well. And it's very much, you know, the way I've dealt with bereavement and focusing on people. And I've met some amazing people through it and some wonderful characters. And you get to know a certain sort of facet of their characters, an insight into who they are. And it's done me the power of good. And I just absolutely adore doing them. My philosophy is just to carry on doing it. I love doing them so much. And it sort of centers me. And it's something, as I said earlier on, a focal point for me. And it sort of, so by next year, I hope to achieve 1,000. Well, I don't hope, I will achieve 1,000. So that seems a considerable number to exhibit.
The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Everybody, welcome back to the Conservative Party conference here in Manchester. And of course, we can't be in God's own city without inviting the Mayor of Greater Manchester. We're honoured to have you here with us. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Kay.
Interesting to hear what you think about what the Chancellor had to say this morning about HS2. Here we go.
Well, I'm sorry, Kay, I'm going to disappoint you. I'm not going to go into details. Well, let me tell you this, that in terms of things like the northern leg of HS2, whatever decision we make, we will take very careful note of the need to have proper economic infrastructure throughout the whole country. But in terms of this specific decision, I'm afraid you will have to wait.
No, I'm not. I'm just asking you what would be the benefits of keeping it.
Well, you're trying to draw me on what the decision might be.
That's my job.
It is your job, but it's also my job to say that we will make the announcement.
It's your job not to answer the question.
No, it's my job to say we'll make the announcement at the appropriate time, and I promise you we will.
I think that's a no, Mr. Burnham.
I think it sounds like one, doesn't it? It feels so wrong, this, to me. You know, the Conservative Party are in a city that is thriving in many ways. You know, it's changed since they were last here 2 years ago. It's grown upwards into the sky. We've got a new public transport system. We're growing faster here than the UK economy. And what do? They pull the rug from under us. It just feels wrong to me that conversations are going on here in our city and we're shut out of them. Myself and the leader of Manchester City Council, we've had no involvement at all in this. And this is a decision of epic proportions for the north of England for the rest of this century. If they do pull the plug, they will basically be saying that the northern economy will be smaller in this century than it might otherwise have been. And the stakes couldn't be higher. And yet here we are. It feels like they've made a decision. They're not prepared to say it while they're here in Manchester, but they'll sort of announce it when they leave. Just all feels wrong to me.
Have you tried to reach out to the Prime Minister while he's here?
I wrote to him a week ago today, and I said, at least give us the courtesy of a meeting. Let us say to you why we think it's important. And the reason why we say it's important is because it lays the foundations for the east-west line across the north of England. So you can't separate HS2 from that. And we also said to him we'd be prepared to have a conversation about rephasing. So maybe we look first at building in the north. So we said we're open to a conversation about all these things, but don't scrap it. Don't just scrap HS2, because you're really going to leave the north of England with Victorian rail infrastructure for the rest of this century, while the southern half of the country, or the southeastern half of the country, would have modern lines north, south, east, west.
What did he say?
Well, we've had no reply, and that's why I say it feels
wrong. What about
wrong.
the Chancellor? Have you written to him?
Not to the Chancellor.
What would you say to the Chancellor?
I would say to the Chancellor is you cannot have growth without the infrastructure to support it. I know that Manchester Piccadilly would be the kind of the heart of a resurgent north of England if we got the right HS2 station there. That would be the way that you really build growth in the economic growth in the English regions. If you pull away that investment, the investors themselves will start to drift away, and that's why the stakes for us couldn't be higher. And here Sky were reporting last night, Sam Coates, that there's emergency cabinet meetings going on about this. When will we get a chance to have our say? They were elected on a promise to level up the north of England, but they're treating people in the north of England as second-class citizens when it comes to transport, and it really isn't right.
How offended are you that the Prime Minister didn't even reply?
I don't think it is a good look. I mean, in some ways, am I welcome? Yeah, I feel pretty welcome here at the Conservative Conference. I feel it's right when people are in the city that I come in and speak to people while they're here. But I would expect that the Prime Minister might speak to us, given that he's about to take a decision that will determine the fate of our railways for the rest of this century.
Not even reply to your letter?
I'm not aware that we've had a reply to the letter. I don't want to be unfair, but I would just make an appeal to him today. Before you take any decision, really, you should speak to leaders in the north of England, just to understand why we feel so strongly about this. You can't kind of scatter funding out to a few favoured towns and say that is levelling up. That isn't levelling up. You can only level up with strategic infrastructure that is then the foundation for economic growth. And I'm afraid, the government feels like it is claiming at this conference to be saying, oh, long-term decisions for a brighter future. It feels to me that they're doing exactly the opposite. They're turning their back on those long-term decisions, turning their back on the infrastructure we need to take this country forward, turning their back on net zero, turning their back on public transport and prioritising the car. That feels to me like fairly grubby short-term decisions from desperate moves by a dying government. And I want him to convince me otherwise. But as it stands this Monday morning, we just feel shut out from something that will really have a big impact on the fate of the north.
Just seeing Therese Coffey walk past as we're chatting. She's got a smile on her face. What are you picking up, the mood here?
Well, it feels to me quite a kind of strange mood, if I'm honest. I don't feel there's a sort of energy around the place. But I mean, as I say, I'm hoping to be proven wrong. I'm here and we're reaching out. I think the key for me would be, what is the future of levelling up? They're here in Manchester, of all places, Manchester. They made promises to us here. If this conference doesn't sort of really give us something to feel that, OK, we can work with that, then really what is the point of this government?
And of course, Labour in the northwest as well next week in Liverpool. It is certainly where both parties feel that the mood is at the moment and where they need to try to convince people to vote either way. It is a deprived part of the country as well, though, and a lot of kids need free school meals, is what we're being told by the Teachers' Union, and they think that the government should pay for it. In London, of course, it's the mayor that pays for free school meals. Is that something you'll look at here in Manchester?
Well, in an ideal world, it's something I would like to do, but we don't have the same funds to be able to do that. We are reforming our public transport, and so I've taken a big decision to put buses back under public control. We've created the B network. It's live now in your all part of the world.
Wigan, let's just pause for a moment. Wigan, good morning, Wiganers, if you're watching this morning.
Good morning to Lee, the Lee half as well.
There we go, absolutely.
But the B
although our rugby
running
team's better, just saying.
In Bolton and Salford and Bury, and the buses built in Britain. That is our priority at the moment, because we're cutting the cost of public transport to benefit everybody and connect people to opportunity. I don't have the funds to be able to prioritise other things than that at the moment.
OK. What is the biggest issue for the people of the North West going into the next election?
I think it's a big question about the way the country is run. Bear in mind now, we've had 3 general elections where we've been given big promises about the North will be levelled up. We will change things for you. And what it looks like to people here is it's basically been, a broken promise. And it looks like Whitehall is incapable of levelling up the North. It doesn't want to level up the North. So the gap between all of those kind of statements, that rhetoric, and the reality as we experience it is actually getting quite big. And I kind of feel people are kind of very disenfranchised with the government, and I think that is kind of spilling over into a sort of distrust, really. And that's why in Liverpool next week I will be saying to Labour there's an opportunity here to really kind of put some detail behind that plan to do true levelling up of the North.
Yeah, but the Labour Party won't. Every time I speak to a shadow minister, they won't confirm that they'll keep HS2.
Well, we'll see next week, won't we? We'll see what comes out of Labour in Liverpool. But I think voters in the North at the moment are, you know, when I say things like we're being treated as second-class citizens, I think whether people agree with HS2 or not, actually they agree with that. They really feel this at the moment. You know, if HS2 is built from outer London through the Chilterns and the home counties to the West Midlands, that will be like a kind of statement of where Whitehall cares about and Westminster. And, you know, people, I think, increasingly saying, you know what, we're not having that anymore.
OK. As you know, the sun always shines on God's own country. It's great to see you.
It's OK today. Hooray.
There we go. Let's see you back for the rest of us.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Mix of autumn sunshine, blustery showers this week. Temperatures, well, they will gradually rise, leading to a very warm weekend. It'll be a mild start this morning with low cloud, fog patches and some drizzle for southern parts of Britain. Further north, it will be fresher with scattered showers.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Still to come, a party divided. Can the Conservatives woo its members and the public before next year's election? We think it's next year. We'll be discussing that. And doctors walk out over pay. We'll talk to the Chief Operating Officer of an NHS trust. Hello again, everybody. We are live from Conservative Party conference here in Manchester, but we've still got our the political editor of The Spectator, Katie Bowles, is with us. Hi. And pleased to say Stephen Bush, associate editor and columnist for the Financial Times, is with us. Hello. Here we are at party conference. What does he have to do to try and win over the country?
Well, quite a lot, if you look at the polls, I think, to begin with. But I think Rishi Sunak needs to show that he is managing to manage the country's current problems in terms of the 5 priorities, but also suggest, I think, some hope and some wider plan for where he wants to take the country. And we know that the Prime Minister wants to try and pitch himself as a change candidate. We saw his interview on Sunday morning, but I think he's used change, over 10 times, maybe close to 20. But of course, if you're representing a party that's been in government for 13 years, it's quite a hard feat.
Yeah. Why is party conference important, or is it not really to the greater public?
Well, it's important mainly for the parties themselves. 1, to raise money, but 2, we shouldn't forget that most party members will never become a councillor, never become an MP, but their door-knocking efforts, their fundraising efforts for their political party matter quite a great deal. And for the activists, this opportunity to come and hear, leaders in their party speak, to ask them questions, is actually one of the very few benefits of party membership. So it's important to political parties' inner lives and also to their bank balances, of course.
Today is the Chancellor's Day. He deftly ignored every question, or dodged every question I asked him. The big question here in Manchester is HS2. Is it going to happen?
I mean, it seems unlikely, doesn't it? I think the very fact that this far away from an autumn statement, we know those conversations are happening with Treasury, Number 10, about the costs, about the feasibility, suggests that, a difficult decision is coming, especially when you add to the fact that Rishi Sunak is trying to make a virtue of this idea he makes difficult decisions. It doesn't look particularly good. And I think the question is the timing, would you be so bold as to say it in Manchester? Yeah. It's, one way of doing hard truths.
What do you think, Steve?
I think we all have allowed ourselves to get carried away with this idea that it would be worse for him to say it in Manchester than it would be for him to spend the whole week looking a bit shifty. And Katie's absolutely right. I think there is very little possibility, unless they're doing some clever bait and switch to make him saying it's going on at the end of his speech seem like a wow moment.
Exactly that, yeah.
But if that's not what's going on, I mean, look, it's not like if he were to say, look, sorry, here's why we're not doing it at the start of the week. Andy Burnham's going to, do a military coup, prevent him leaving Manchester? I mean, I think it would be better off just coming out and saying, here's why I'm doing or not doing it, and here's why. But of course, it may be that we're seeing some very clever bit of spin, so that when he announces what would actually be old news, we go, oh, wow, what a bold choice.
But is he not saying to the people of the Northwest and the North, anybody north of Birmingham, that you're a second-class citizen? That's what Labour Mayor is saying.
Well, that's the narrative he's going to come up against. And obviously, you have a Labour Mayor saying that, but some confusion within the shadow cabinet as to where exactly they sit on the project because it's so expensive. I think that means that Rishi Sunak needs to do more in terms of talking about interconnectivity. I think would probably, if they do scrap it, talking about, but we're doing this to connect, these towns, this is what we're doing. But it clearly does pose a challenge to the levelling up narrative, particularly when you have someone like Boris Johnson too, who thinks Rishi Sunak's abandoned the narrative. So from lots of different sides, you have a Prime Minister under pressure and this idea that he isn't committed to that area.
Triple lock is what I was talking to the Chancellor about this morning. Now, if you're under 60, it doesn't really mean that much to you. So why is the Chancellor so keen, basically, to tell us that it's going to go ahead? Because they need, I'm guessing, tell me otherwise, I'm guessing they need young voters come the next election.
Well, yeah, they need to, although they don't need very young voters, they do need to get the average age of people voting Tory down to about 35. Essentially, if you can get that average age down to 35 and you're the Conservatives, you've won the election, won it comfortably. If it's at 40, you're back in 2017, hung Parliament, very difficult situation. And if it's much higher, as it currently is, you're in a great deal of political difficulty. But it's worth noting that although the triple lock doesn't help young people right now, it will help them in the future. And our pensions are still relatively ungenerous by OECD standards. And if you're the Chancellor and you're looking at these polls and you know the one reliable voter bank you can rely on is pensioners, do you really want to take away basically the one remaining plank of your electoral coalition?
What's Liz Truss up to?
Talking about tax, as she likes to do.
That worked out well for her last time.
Yeah. Well, I think we're seeing a new phase of the Liz Truss comeback where, of course, I think Labour couldn't really hide their glee when they wanted to make lots of the mini-budget and she decided to mark the one-year anniversary of a speech. And now we're seeing the next part of that, which is to come to Tory conference. Now, of course, Rishi Sunak stayed away last year. Slightly passag, a source close to Rishi Sunak said at the time, I want to let Liz Truss own the moment. There wasn't that much to own, given the circumstances. But the fact that she doesn't want to give Rishi Sunak the space, I think, is interesting. Her supporters say, well, she loves conference, she comes every year, why shouldn't she? But I think what's going to be really interesting is what is the reaction from Tory activists? Is it the case, given they rejected Rishi Sunak last summer, that they have more warmth towards Liz Truss despite everything? Or will this be a sign that actually she doesn't have the influence that some like to make out?
What do you make of the mood?
Better than last year. Yeah, when it really was, I actually think, quite hard for anyone watching this at home to realise just how unpleasant and fractious the atmosphere is. But I would say quite resigned to basically, I think most people think that the polls are going to play out the way that they are. That's, I think, the big thing that both the Chancellor today and the Prime Minister on Wednesday need to do is, at the least, to raise the mood within the Conservative Party. And you can see one consequence of that fatalism is that you have even members of the Cabinet being quite unhelpful. Not as unhelpful as they were last year, but nowhere near as helpful as they were even in those quite bad years for Theresa May in 2017 and 2018, let alone the very unified performance they were putting on in, say, 2014, 2013, which is what helped them have that surprise victory in 2015.
Yeah, I think the fact that you're getting that leadership speculation about, which cabinet minister is doing the highest number of events just shows, that things are not particularly rosy for Rishi Sunak. We're not in an all-out rebellion stage in the slightest, but I think his challenge is to somehow use this event to make his MPs and even the grassroots who are going to be out sending out the leaflets, knocking on doors, think there is something worth fighting for. And right now, there's no mutiny. I just don't think there's much enthusiasm.
Good to see you both. Thanks very much indeed. Enjoy conference, if that's the right thing to say. I'm not sure. It's lovely to see you. Thank you. Still to come, another difficult week for rail passengers as more strikes are set to take place this week. Speaking to Mick Lynch next.
It started off as a project to do a piece of work which would be a composite of, say, 80 portraits and have it as one piece. And so from a distance, it would look quite abstract. And then as it got closer, you'll see the sort of personalities of each portrait. And that's a portrait I just did of a friend's dog who passed away last year. So I trained at the Royal Academy and learned. We did a lot of drawing from life, and there was a lot of portraiture as well. So I was inspired by that. My father was an artist, and he did some wonderful portraits. So I suppose it's in my psyche, really. Unfortunately, 10 years ago, my fiancée passed away, Debbie, and she said, if you can do 80, you can do 100. If you can do 100, you can do 200. And she said, you could actually do the city of St. David's. And I just thought, what an amazing idea. And it's sort of her legacy as well. And it's very much, the way I've dealt with bereavement and focusing on people. And I've met some amazing people through it and some wonderful characters. And you get to know a certain sort of facet of their characters, an insight into who they are. And it's done me the power of good. And I just absolutely adore doing them. My philosophy is just to carry on doing it. I love doing them so much, and it sort of centres me, and it's something, as I said earlier on, a focal point for me. And it sort of, so by next year, I hope to achieve 1,000. Well, I don't hope, I will achieve 1,000. So that seems a considerable number to exhibit.
Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Another difficult week for rail passengers, with both train drivers and also London's underground workers taking to the picket lines over the next few days. Let's get more, should we? Mick Lynch, General Secretary of the RMT Union, is with us. Hello to you, Mr. Lynch. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. Another difficult week for commuters. What are you saying to them?
Well, we do sympathise with them, and of course railway workers don't want to be on strike, but the fact is that these attacks on our members, attacks on their terms and conditions, staffing levels, are continuous, and there's no sign at the moment that they're going to stop. We're hoping from this Tory party conference perhaps we'll get some signals that they want to do agreements with us, but they've put the London Mayor under pressure to impose cuts, and of course they're directing the national rail disputes because Mark Harper and through him, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister are in charge of that dispute, and they set the negotiating mandate. And at this time, there's no sign that they want to achieve an agreement. They seem to be pouring the pressure on, more anti-union laws, but more levels of what we believe is corruption and incompetence and belligerence attacked at us. So we feel for those passengers, but it's a sign of what's happening in our society, I think, with consultants and junior doctors and railway workers and others having to take industrial action to get any kind of deal out of the government.
OK, if the strike goes into a third year, 2024, would your demands shift?
Well, our demands have been to stop attacking us. We want to protect our members' terms and conditions. We want to protect their place in the railway pension scheme. We want to defend the service that we run on behalf of the public. We want to keep those staffing numbers up so that people can expect to turn up and go accessible and safe and secure railway. When we've achieved some peace on that, we will examine our pay. You're right, we haven't had a pay rise for 4 years. We don't want that to go any longer. And the companies are insisting through the government that we must pay for our own pay rises in terms of losing our own members and closing down many services on the railway. So we're not shifting our demands. We want a reasonable pay rise, but we also want to defend our members' terms and conditions and the service that we operate.
What should we read into the fact that you couldn't get to Manchester this weekend, you can't get home on Wednesday, it just happens to be Conservative Party conference, it's Labour Party conference next weekend and the trains are running?
Well, RMT hasn't been on strike in regard to the Tory conference. We've got a strike this week which is around station destaffing, and those destaffing measures are coming in on their own timetable that's not associated with the Tory conference. So, yeah, I don't think you can read anything into it. The people that are on strike on Saturday and Wednesday on the National Railway are in another union, but we will continue our campaign. We have a mandate that's been given to us by our members. But I am ready to negotiate. I have put forward documentation and proposals to the train operating companies, and I know they share them directly with the Rail Minister, Hugh Merriman, and the Secretary of State, Mark Harper. And it's up to them to respond in a framework of goodwill so that we can navigate our way through this dispute and get to a period where we've got no strikes on the railway. But at the moment, they're simply not prepared to do that. The way they play up to the right-wing agenda in their own party and in the right-wing media in this country is very regrettable. If they want to have good industrial relations, it means they've got to come to the negotiating table, unshackle those companies that they've got under contract and allow them to negotiate with us to get a settlement to the disputes.
Okay. Mick, we're out of time, but it's always good to talk to you. Thanks for taking the time to join us from central London this morning. Thank you. Coming up in a few moments' time, we're going to be talking to these two gentlemen. They've got a new podcast called Politics at Jack and Sam's, after the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Autumn, a mix of sunshine and blustery showers this week. Temperatures, well, they'll be gradually rising, leading to a very warm weekend. Yay! It'll be a mild start this morning with low cloud, fog patches and some drizzle for southern parts of Britain. Further north, it'll be fresher with scattered showers.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Jack and Sam are here. I did ask whether the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Lee Anderson, of course, would like to join us. And he said, verbatim, "I hate Sky. You're all horrible."
Well, he does work for a rival channel. Now, look, I'm in favour of competition. I hope he changes his mind.
OK, this is your new podcast.
They are looking at bringing forward the announcement around this decision a lot, possibly even to this week here in Manchester. At the moment, the only question you can talk about is, the only discussion around this is, will you cancel HS2? They want to move the conversation on to, if you cancel HS2, here are the road schemes and the other rail schemes and the potholes that we will fill in to replace the scheme, to spend the money that otherwise would have gone on HS2. I'm told it's not totally decided that that's the course of action, but that's what is definitely under discussion.
It's great intel, but terrible rail metaphors. Trains don't do U-turns.
Jack, tell me how you deal with all of the arms.
You just have to duck, Kay, because when he's in full flow, it's like an eagle taking off, isn't it? Terrifying.
Tell me about it.
So the whole idea...
Put your hands down on the table. There we go.
Sorry, Kay. So the whole idea is that we are going to go through the papers, read every story, find out what's coming up in the week ahead, message every advisor and give you the best briefing that you could possibly have for the week ahead on a Sunday night. It'll drop at 6:30, wherever you get your podcasts, and it's basically our desire is to help everybody who's interested in UK politics know what's coming up. It's not one of those podcasts going back over what's already happened. It tells you what's coming up, and we hope people like it.
And why is this going to be a perfect marriage?
Well, Sam and I have known each other for quite a long time. We're veterans of the Press Gallery in Westminster for our sins. We also happen to live near each other in South East London, so we thought it'd be fun to do this in our homes.
You can't move your hands in your car.
Sorry, it's very hard. We're gonna do this on a Sunday afternoon from our homes in South East London.
With a glass of wine?
Well, I think that maybe week 3, week 4, once we're up into the swing of it, yeah. But as Sam says, the main thing is it's meant to be useful, Kay. It's meant to allow people to enjoy their weekend, switch off from politics, but then on a Sunday night, as you're getting back into gear for the week ahead, we'll tell you everything that's coming up.
OK, today, what did you think of what the Chancellor had to say or didn't say to us?
Well, look, he was tight-lipped on HS2, like a man who had something to say pretty imminently. Look, we were reporting overnight they could make a decision this week. There could be an emergency cabinet meeting this week. I think they'll clarify fairly soon whether that's the case or not, but it's tortuous at this conference. You were talking to Andy Burnham. He was explaining why it's so difficult to have all of that playing out right here. Big speech for the Chancellor. The question is, with water bills alone going up by a huge amount, is it going to make enough of a difference?
Well, the triple lock, and basically an announcement on the triple lock, will that be enough? They need younger voters, surely.
No, you're totally right. The problem that he's got is he's very constrained by how much he can spend, i.e. not very much at all at the moment. You know, they've made this pledge on inflation, they've made this pledge to keep the public finances tight. There's not that much he can do in the terms of, you know, giveaways that are going to please the Tory masses here. I think, really, his plan is to try and save up what money he's got for something in the spring, something closer to the general election where he can make a big play on one of the taxes that'll at least get the Tory faithful happy.
When's the next election going to be? Suggestion that if inflation goes down to 3%, then we'll have a snap general election. I put that to the Chancellor, he wouldn't have it.
But there are cabinet ministers saying that, to be honest, Kay.
No,
I've heard it. I heard it last night. Look, it's either May or October, November, and I suspect Rishi Sunak thinks he's good at the job. Thinks if he just has one more chance and one more chance, I think he'll go longer.
There's never been a Prime Minister who looks like they're going to lose who's gone early to the ballot box. They cling on with their fingernails for the last possible minute, and I'm sure Rishi Sunak will be just the same. It'll be as close to Christmas next year as he thinks he can get away with.
What, or the next year, the year after, 2025, he could go to if he wanted to?
I mean, if he wants to crater our Christmases, then I don't think that'll go so well.
The idea of sending MPs out door-knocking on Christmas Day, can you imagine how that would go down with Brenda from Bristol and everybody else?
I like that, Brenda from Bristol. What's the atmosphere going to be like here this week? It feels better than it did this time last year, I have to say.
That's a low bar.
Yeah, no, you know, you make a good point.
And it's better than it could have been 2 weeks ago. Look, a lot of the Tories here quite like the decision to flex some of the net zero targets to soften them in order to help people with the adjustment to a sort of new green economy. That's given them a bit of a lift. They think Rishi's got a bit of fight about him, but they're still 17 points behind in the polls. The more you dig in after the second glass of wine, the realism sets in. It is, underneath a sort of superficial bonhomie, quite painful.
And I think the problem Rishi Sunak's got, Kay, is this is the time he needs his party pulling together ahead of election, all charging in the same direction. Instead, he's got Liz Truss at lunchtime having her own rally against the Chancellor's policies. He's got other ministers. We're going to hear from Theresa May later on the environment. He's probably not going to like that either. Others are releasing their own alternative Tory manifestos. This is not a united party, and that makes it very difficult for Rishi Sunak to present the face he wants to the country.
But let's not forget what Labour has to do in order to have a one-seat majority. I think I'm right in saying they need a swing like they had in '97.
That's right. Now, a couple of things are going to help them. If the Liberal Democrats start doing well and the SNP collapse in Scotland, all of those things are going to make that job easier. And we'll find out on Thursday, when there's the Rutherglen by-election, if some of those seats are returning from the SNP to Labour. That's a really big moment.
That's right, but you're still right, Kay. It needs a landslide for Labour to get back into power. And, whatever you think of Keir Starmer, he ain't Tony Blair, is he? Even he would not, paint himself as this sort of big, figure on the stage.
Let me show a QR code. This is how a QR code. We love them, don't we? I used to use them at the supermarket. In fact, there it is. They can subscribe to your podcast by doing that.
Please do. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I can see.
Every Sunday night, half an hour, a briefing from me and Sam. What more could you want at the
Exactly, with a glass of wine in your hand as well. Thanks very much indeed, guys. Looking forward to it. Last night's was great, by the way. And also remember that Sarah Jane Mee has a new programme coming out as well at 8 o'clock this evening. So if you reach here at 7 o'clock, I'll see you tomorrow morning.